Right now, something is stealing your life, and you don't even realize it. Not your job, not your phone, but your mind. You're trapped in thoughts that don't serve you, chasing things that never fulfill you, reacting to life instead of shaping it. And the worst part, you think this is normal. Every morning, you wake up with a quiet sense that something's missing. You scroll endlessly, seeking distraction. You crave approval, avoid discomfort, and push aside that uneasy feeling deep down, the voice that whispers, "This isn't it." You know it. You feel it. That subtle frustration that nags at the back of your mind. The ache of untapped potential. And if you keep ignoring it, if you keep pretending everything's fine, then one day you'll look in the mirror and realize decades have passed, and you never became who you were meant to be. But not today. Today, something shifts. Because the truth is, most people will never master their minds. They stay stuck, led by emotion, manipulated by others, wasting time on things that don't matter. But a rare few, they break the cycle. They tap into the ancient wisdom of the Stoics and transform their lives from the inside out. Are you one of them? If you're still watching, if some part of you refuses to settle for average, then keep going. Because once you master these timeless Stoic lessons, nothing will shake you again. Let's begin. Here's the hard truth. Most people never become truly great. Not because they're not smart, not because they lack talent, and certainly not because they don't have the time. They fail because they want validation too soon. They crave results now. They want to be applauded before they've done anything worth noticing. And that craving, that hunger for recognition, it kills their growth. The ones who rise, the ones who become unshakable, they grow in silence. They don't chase likes. They don't beg for praise. They do the work, day after day, without applause. Until one day, the world has no choice but to notice. That is the Stoic way. And if you commit to it, truly commit, you'll become unstoppable. The problem is, we live in a culture that feeds on instant gratification. People want to post every workout, announce every tiny win, measure success by how many people are watching, not by how much they've actually grown. But real mastery, real strength, it happens where no one is watching. In the quiet hours, in the sacrifices no one sees, in the discipline no one thanks you for. And if you can learn to love that kind of growth, to push forward without needing recognition, you will quietly outgrow everyone chasing attention instead of transformation. And one day, when people finally notice how much you've changed, they'll ask, "When did this happen?" And you'll smile because you'll know. People always underestimate the power of invisible growth. Because it doesn't feel like progress when no one is clapping, when you're working in silence, when there's no immediate reward. Your mind whispers, "Why am I even doing this?" That's where most people give up. They want change to be dramatic, to go viral, to be obvious. But true growth, the kind that lasts, it's never loud. It's not driven by motivation. It's not a before and after Instagram post. It's forged in silence, and it becomes who you are. Growth in silence isn't glamorous, but it's where the real transformation begins. Consistent action, small, quiet, often unnoticed, can feel meaningless in the moment. But those same actions, over time, they can reshape your entire future. Think about a tree. If you stare at it every day, it doesn't look like it's growing. And a mountain. You won't see the change when the wind erodes it grain by grain. But give it time, weeks, months, years, and the difference becomes undeniable. That's the challenge. Most people don't have the patience to wait. They want to see results now. They pick up a new habit, a new discipline, a new skill, and when they don't see big progress after just a few weeks, they decide it's not working, so they quit, then move on to something else, and then to something else again. But those who truly master anything understand one thing above all: the power of compounding effort. They don't measure their growth in days, not even in months. They think in years, because they know that greatness isn't built in sudden breakthroughs. It's built in the quiet, uncelebrated work that no one claps for. That's why the Stoics never chased recognition. They didn't need applause. They weren't looking to impress anyone. They weren't hungry for praise or status. Their only focus was mastery, real mastery. The kind that isn't always visible, but always true. If you truly want to transform, you must do the same. And here's the hardest part of silent growth: the lack of validation. When you're putting in the work, day after day, and no one sees it, your mind begins to rebel. The thoughts creep in. What's the point if no one notices? Does this even matter? This is where most people break. They've been relying on external motivation, on feedback, on praise, on measurable, visible improvement. And when that disappears, so does their drive. But the moment you stop needing validation, you become untouchable. When your motivation comes from deep within, nothing can take it from you. You don't slow down just because no one's watching. You don't give up just because no one's clapping. You become something rare, something powerful. Because while others lose steam when their effort goes unnoticed, you keep going. While others need constant encouragement to believe they're improving, you trust the process. And over time, while they're stuck in cycles of starting and stopping, you quietly and relentlessly become great. This is the Stoic mindset. Do the work. Ignore the noise. Trust the process. Most people will never master this. They'll remain addicted to recognition. They'll post every minor milestone online just to get that quick dopamine hit. They'll spend more time proving they're improving than actually improving. And years from now, when they wonder why nothing has changed, they won't realize they've been trapped all along, enslaved by their need for attention. If you want to be different, you must let go of the need to be seen. Work as if no one will ever notice. Improve as if no one will ever praise you. Become the kind of person who doesn't need applause to keep going. Because when you do, you unlock something far more powerful: the ability to grow without limits. And one of the biggest reasons people fail at this kind of silent growth: they compare constantly. They look sideways. They watch others. They see someone who started later making more visible progress, and immediately feel discouraged. They wonder, why am I not improving as fast? They lose focus. They drift from their own journey. But here's the truth. Comparison is poison. Comparison clouds your focus, but clarity begins the moment you return to your own path. When you focus on someone else's journey, you lose control over your own. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Your only true competition is not the person next to you, it's the person you were yesterday. It doesn't matter if someone else is progressing faster. It doesn't matter if they're being celebrated while you're being overlooked. None of that is relevant. The only thing that truly matters is this. Are you better today than you were yesterday? You must retrain your mind to see growth differently. Stop searching for obvious signs of progress. Stop expecting instant, visible results. Start placing value on the small, subtle, almost imperceptible shifts, the ones no one else sees. The ones that make you a little stronger, a little sharper, a little wiser. Because over time, those are the changes that matter most. Those are the changes that last. Visible growth, flashy change. It often fades just as quickly as it appeared. Think about it. How many people do you know who make a big announcement about turning their life around, only to quit a few months later? They post every minor win. They seek applause for every tiny effort. But the moment the praise disappears, so does their motivation. Meanwhile, those who change in silence become unstoppable. They don't waste time proving themselves to others. They don't need permission or praise to keep going. And because they're free from distraction, they move faster. They go deeper. They endure longer. That's why throughout history, the greatest warriors, the deepest thinkers, the most powerful minds, they all mastered the art of invisible growth. They trained while no one was watching. They studied while no one was listening. They built strength in solitude. And by the time the world finally noticed them, it was already too late to stop them. This path, it's not for everyone. But if you have the discipline, if you have the patience, if you can learn to love the process without needing praise, you will become one of the rarest and most powerful kinds of people in the world. And one day, when others look at you in awe and ask, "How did you do it?" you'll already know the answer. You did it in silence. Most people wait until disaster strikes to start preparing. They wait until the storm hits before learning how to weather it. They don't build mental strength until they're already drowning in chaos. But by then, it's too late. They panic. They break. They collapse under the weight of pressure they were never trained to carry. But those who truly understand life, those who refuse to be victims, who refuse to be weak, they build their strength before they need it. They don't wait for pain to arrive, they prepare for it. They train for the battle before it begins. They build an unshakable mind while everything is still calm. So when the chaos comes, and it always does, they don't just survive. They stand unbroken. This is the difference between those who collapse and those who endure. Most people have no idea how fragile they truly are. They assume they're strong until life shows them otherwise. They think they can handle failure, that they're ready for heartbreak, loss, betrayal. But when it actually hits them, they realize their mind was never equipped to carry that weight. They're forced to learn resilience in the middle of the suffering. And for many, by then, it's too late. They become stuck, trapped in regret, unable to move forward, because they never trained themselves to endure hardship. And that's why preemptive resilience is so rare. It requires effort when nothing seems wrong. It demands you train when there is no visible threat. Most people avoid preparation for pain because they can't imagine it coming until it does. And that's the problem. Most people won't put in the effort for a hardship they can't yet see. They wait. They postpone. They tell themselves it's unnecessary until the moment everything falls apart. But those who do prepare, they become unshakable. There's an ancient truth we've forgotten. The best time to prepare for war is during peace. You don't sharpen your sword in the middle of battle. You don't start forging armor after the first attack hits. And you don't develop resilience while drowning in pain. You develop it long before, so that when life strikes, when the storm comes, you don't scramble for strength. You already have it. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't wait for tragedy to teach them discipline. They didn't need life to break them before they learned how to be strong. They practiced hardship while life was still easy. They embraced discomfort voluntarily, not because they had to, but because they knew suffering is inevitable. And the only real question is, will you be ready when it comes? Most people convince themselves they'll rise to the occasion. When disaster strikes, I'll figure it out. They say, I'll handle it when the time comes. But that is a comforting lie. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training. When pain hits, when betrayal cuts deep, when grief breaks your heart, you won't respond as the person you hope to be. You'll respond as the person you've trained yourself to be. And if you've never trained, you won't survive it. The strongest minds in history, the unbreakable ones, they weren't forged during chaos. They were built in stillness, not in crisis, but in quiet. The warrior doesn't wait until the battlefield to learn how to fight. The philosopher doesn't wait until they're drowning in pain to discover patience. And the master of any craft doesn't begin studying only once the test has begun. Yet most people live with no preparation at all. They hope strength will appear when life gets hard. They assume suffering itself will somehow make them strong. But suffering alone does not create strength. Preparation does. Training for hardship before it arrives means choosing discomfort before you're forced into it. It means rehearsing for loss before you lose, facing rejection before it finds you, building endurance before you're tested. It means making peace with failure before it happens, learning how to function in solitude before loneliness creeps in. Training your emotions before they're shattered. This is what the Stoics practiced. And this is why life's worst moments didn't shake them. Most people believe suffering is something to avoid. They run from it, resist it, treat it like an unfair curse. They assume life is supposed to be easy, and when it's not, they react with anger, confusion, and frustration. But those who've trained for hardship, they don't see suffering as an enemy. They see it as a teacher. They don't fight against pain. They allow it to forge them into something stronger. They don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves. They use every struggle as a test of their training. The great mistake of the weak is believing that resilience is something you summon in the moment. But resilience isn't a reaction. It's a habit. You build it every single day through the quiet choices you make. You build it when no one is watching. You build it in the discipline you keep even when no one notices or cares. You build it when you deny yourself comfort, when you choose the difficult path. Not because you have to, but because you know it will shape you. You build resilience not by avoiding pain, but by embracing discomfort before life forces it upon you. True resilience isn't built in crisis, it's built long before. In the quiet preparation few are willing to do. Resilience isn't just about surviving hardship. It's about thriving in it. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't just endure pain but grows stronger because of it. The weak suffer and break. The strong suffer and adapt. The untrained encounter pain and collapse under its weight, but the trained, they face pain and emerge as something greater than they were before. What most people don't realize is how much power their mind holds over their life. They think they're simply reacting to the world around them. But in truth, they're slaves to their emotions, their fears, and their past. They're ruled by their circumstances, instead of being in control of themselves. The strongest minds aren't the ones who never feel pain. They are the ones who have trained their minds to be larger than their pain. They've conditioned themselves to endure anything. And that kind of strength doesn't come from hope or wishful thinking. It comes from relentless, intentional preparation. The person who has trained for hardship doesn't panic when crisis arrives. They don't crumble under pressure because pressure is familiar to them. They've faced it before. They don't let grief destroy them because they've already made peace with loss before it came. They don't let fear take control because they've already stared fear in the face when nothing was at stake. This is why the Stoics could endure pain with such calm. They had already lived it in their minds. They had already rehearsed the worst and were ready when it arrived. There's an incredible advantage to being prepared. While others unravel, while the world spirals, while people lose control in chaos, you remain steady. You're not reacting emotionally like the rest. You're not confused, panicking, or lost. You stand firm because you've trained for this. This isn't arrogance. It's not ego. It's simply the reality of preparation. The mind that has already endured war before it begins is the mind that survives it best when it arrives. But most people don't live like this. They seek comfort at every chance. They avoid difficulty. They dodge anything that challenges them. And in doing so they become fragile. They don't see that their constant pursuit of comfort is making them unfit for life's inevitable struggles. Because when the real test comes, when the hardship is inescapable, they have no foundation, no strength to stand on, no training to fall back on. But the ones who have trained, they don't make this mistake. They don't run from struggle, they seek it. They look for ways to challenge themselves. They practice discomfort on purpose. They wake up early when they don't have to. They train their bodies when no one's watching. They choose discipline over ease, not because it's fun, but because they know one day life will demand strength. And when that day comes, they'll already be ready. This is the paradox of strength. Those who embrace difficulty before they need to are the ones least affected by it when it comes. Those who train for war during peace are the ones who walk through chaos with clarity. But those who avoid struggle, who cling to comfort, who refuse to prepare, they're the ones broken. by the very hardship they tried to escape. Most people will never understand this. And the truth is, many of them don't want to. Most people chase comfort, but those who seek greatness choose something far more powerful: preparation. They want a life where nothing challenges them, where every day is easy, where they never have to struggle or suffer or be tested. But those who truly desire greatness, they don't ask for ease, they ask for preparation. They don't pray for a smooth, simple path. They train for the hard one. They don't wish for a future free from hardship. They become the kind of person who can handle anything. And that is the difference. It's the line between those who are controlled by life and those who control their life. It's the line between the weak and the strong, between those who are broken by suffering and those who are forged by it. Most people will never choose this path, but those who do, they are the ones who become unbreakable. The average person believes their problems come from the outside world. They blame circumstances, people, events. They blame the economy, their past, their relationships. They say things like, "If only my situation were different. If I had more money. If people treated me better. If life wasn't so hard." Then they tell themselves, then they'd finally be at peace. But this is the greatest lie ever sold. The truth. The world doesn't create your suffering. Your perception does. Nothing has meaning until your mind gives it one. Two people can go through the exact same experience, yet one breaks under the weight of it, while the other uses it to rise. The difference isn't in what happened. The difference is in how it was interpreted. This isn't just philosophy. This is the foundation of your reality. Everything you experience, every emotion you feel, every decision you make, it all stems from the meaning your mind assigns to events, not the events themselves. Your perception is the architect of your life. It shapes what you see, it shapes what you believe, and eventually, it shapes who you become. Most people never truly understand this. They live believing they're victims of reality, trapped in conditions beyond their control. They don't realize they're actively participating in their own suffering through the way they think. They don't see that by shifting their perception, they could shift everything. This is the radical power of what you could call Stoic quantum thinking, the understanding that your mind dictates your world, not the other way around. Those who fail to master this remain trapped. They live in endless cycles of stress, resentment, and disappointment. Why? Because they let external events dictate their inner state. They react automatically. They assume the worst. They let fleeting emotions steer their decisions. And because they never take control of how they see the world, their world never changes. But those who understand this truth, they become untouchable. They train themselves to see events not as good or bad, but as neutral, shaped entirely by interpretation. They stop wasting energy fighting the world. Instead, they reshape their response to it. They stop trying to control the uncontrollable and start mastering the one thing that always remains within reach: their perspective. Because the truth is this: reality doesn't bend for those who complain. It bends for those who control the lens through which they see it. Now, Many people misunderstand this concept. They think it means lying to yourself, pretending everything's fine when it clearly isn't. They think perception control is just delusion. But Stoic quantum thinking isn't about denial. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about choosing a perspective that empowers you, instead of choosing helplessness. Stoic thinking invites you to choose clarity and control even in chaos. It's not about pretending the storm isn't real. It's about choosing how you walk through it. That's the power of perception, not delusion, not fantasy, but clarity, the ability to define meaning on your own terms. Because when you realize that nothing has power over your emotions unless you allow it, you take back your life. Most people never reach this point. They live as if they are powerless. They hand over control of their peace to every passing problem. Someone says something rude suddenly, they're angry. Plans get disrupted, they spiral into frustration. They receive bad news, they collapse into despair. Their mood is controlled by the world around them. And because the world is unpredictable, so are they. But the Stoic doesn't live like this. They understand, I cannot control the world, but I can control my response to it. They train themselves not to react impulsively, but to pause, to breathe, to reflect before responding. They don't give away their peace cheaply. They hold it close, guard it carefully, because they know once you master your perception, you master your life. This doesn't mean you suppress your emotions. It doesn't mean you pretend to be unbothered by everything. It means you decide what things are worth your energy and what things are not. It means you are no longer a puppet of your emotions. You become the observer, not the victim. This mindset is a choice, and it's one that must be made daily, because every day the world will test you. It will throw chaos, stress, and noise your way. And every day you will have a choice. Will I react without thinking? Or will I respond with intention? Most people react. They let the moment dictate their mood. But those who choose perception mastery, they respond with power. They've trained their minds to remain steady even in emotional storms, and that steadiness becomes their superpower. While others panic, they stay calm. While others break, they bend and bounce back stronger. They don't need the world to be easy, because they've made their mind strong enough to face anything. So the next time life pushes you, pause, step back, and ask yourself, what meaning will I assign to this moment? Because in that question lies your freedom. Once you understand that perception is power, you start seeing life through a different lens, especially when it comes to your past. Most people are prisoners of yesterday. They let the past dictate how they feel today. They replay old failures in their minds. They hold on to regrets. They revisit painful memories over and over again, allowing them to shape their present and limit their future. What they don't realize is this: every time they dwell on the pain, they're reinforcing it. They're carving it deeper into their identity. But those who master perception do something radically different. They learn to reinterpret the past, not to escape it, but to extract power from it. They don't see pain as something to resent. They see it as something to learn from. They stop identifying with their mistakes. Instead, they treat mistakes as data, valuable information, not a definition of who they are. They shift their mental focus from what went wrong to what comes next. And this is why some people evolve while others stay stuck. The ones who stay stuck, they anchor themselves to destructive stories. They repeat the same narrative in their head. I failed. I was rejected. This is who I am now. They define themselves by their lowest moments and convince themselves they can never change. But the ones who grow, they refuse to let their past become their prison. They rewrite the story. They don't ask, "What happened to me?" They ask, "What can I make from this?" Because the mind is not a passive observer of reality. It's an active creator of it. Your thoughts don't just describe your world, they design it. If your thoughts fixate on problems, your reality becomes a battlefield full of obstacles. But if your thoughts focus on possibility, your world opens up with opportunities. If you see hardship as a curse, you'll feel trapped and powerless. But if you see hardship as preparation, you'll feel unstoppable. This is why people who complain stay miserable. Their perception is locked on what's wrong, so their reality follows. This is why people who expect to fail usually do. They've already decided how the world works, and the mind simply delivers what it's programmed to see. The shift begins when you stop accepting your assumptions as truth. You pause before reacting. You question your worst thoughts. You begin to rewrite your internal dialogue. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How is this happening for me?" The world doesn't change. Circumstances stay chaotic. Other people remain unpredictable. But when your perspective changes, everything else does. Those who master this don't let the world shape them. They become the architects of their own reality. They no longer let emotion drive the wheel. They stop letting chaos on the outside control the calm on the inside. They find stability from within, and that stability makes them untouchable. Most people, however, never reach this level of clarity. They remain trapped inside their own reactive minds. They live life on autopilot, mistaking their perception for reality. They move through the world as if they have no influence, as if life is something that just happens to them. But those who understand the truth, they gain something extraordinary: the ability to walk through any storm with control, with presence, with peace. Most people go through life believing reality is set, something external they must constantly react to. But perception control teaches a deeper truth. Life doesn't hand you a fixed narrative. You write it yourself. The meaning you assign to each moment determines whether you feel broken or empowered, whether you see a situation as a dead end or a breakthrough. And yet, even with all this mastery, all this growth, there is one thing that still lingers for many people: the weight of unfinished conversations. Even after mastering your perception, one of the hardest lessons remains: finding peace when closure never arrives. Some wounds are created by the words that were spoken, but others, perhaps deeper, are carved by the words that were never said. The conversation that ended too soon, the apology that never came, the explanation you waited for but never received, the final goodbye that was never spoken, the closure that never happened. The human mind craves completion. It wants to close the loop. It longs for a clean ending, something final and satisfying that lets you move forward in peace. But what happens when that closure never comes? What happens when you're left with loose ends, unanswered questions, and the lingering echo of things left unsaid? This is where most people become trapped. They tell themselves, "I can't move on until I get that conversation. I need to understand why. I need them to admit what they did." They believe their healing depends on someone else, that their pain will vanish once they receive clarity. But this belief is a trap, because the truth is most closure never arrives. The person who hurt you may never apologize. The friend who disappeared might never explain. The betrayal may never make sense. The relationship that ended may always feel unresolved. If your peace depends on receiving something from someone else, you've just given them control over your emotional freedom. And if you tie your healing to an explanation, you might wait forever. This is the mistake most people make. They think closure is something they must get. But in reality, closure is something you create. You don't need that last conversation. You don't need the apology. You don't need understanding. And you certainly don't need permission to move on. Because if you keep waiting for someone else to give you peace, you are still allowing them to control your life. The Stoics understood this with profound clarity. They didn't beg for explanations. They didn't demand apologies or wait for validation. They knew that to move forward with strength, you had to stop needing the world to make sense. They mastered the art of walking away, without resolution, without the bow neatly tied, without the answers. And when you learn to do the same, you'll be free from the chains of unfinished conversations forever. Most people think they need understanding to let go. They believe that if they could just hear why, if they could just know what the other person was thinking, if they could just understand what happened, then they could finally release the pain. But this, too, is an illusion. Understanding doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't make disappointment disappear. Even if you were handed every answer you seek, it would still never undo what happened. The past is the past. No amount of clarity can change it. The only thing you can change is how you choose to relate to it. That's the real closure. It's not something they give you. It's something you give yourself. That's why so many people struggle to let go, because they're still waiting for the missing piece. But here's the truth. There is no missing piece. The only thing missing is the acceptance that you no longer need to understand it to be free from it. Closure is not about clarity. It's about deciding you no longer need clarity. It's about choosing to stop chasing what will never come and redirecting your energy toward what still can. Because every time you tell yourself you need a final conversation, a perfect explanation, or that long-awaited apology, you're handing your power away. Once you understand that closure is a personal decision, not a gift others give you, your path to peace becomes your own. Because every time you say, "I need them to respond," you're really saying, "My peace depends on someone else." But the strongest people, those who are truly free, refuse to let their emotional stability hang on someone else's words or actions. They don't sit around waiting for apologies that may never come. They don't put their healing on pause, waiting for an explanation. They don't need closure handed to them. They decide to move forward on their own terms. The most dangerous illusion in human relations, hips, is this: that resolution always requires to people. That both sides must understand that for healing to happen, both must agree on what went wrong. But in real life, that almost never happens. People leave without warning. Friendships fade for no clear reason. Words are left unspoken forever. And often, the person who hurt you isn't thinking about it the way you are. In fact, they may not be thinking about it at all. And this is why the strongest people learn to let go, even when they still have questions, even when it still doesn't make sense. They don't let their peace become a hostage of someone else's silence. They learn to close the chapter, even when the ending was never written. They understand life does not always offer a full explanation, and that's okay. Most people never reach this level of strength. Why? Because they confuse resolution with peace. They think, if I could just talk to them one more time, if I could just understand why it happened, if I could get that one last conversation. But peace is not found in explanations. It's found in acceptance. Because there will always be things you never know. There will always be words left unsaid. There will always be apologies that were never given. And waiting for any of that will keep you trapped in a loop that never ends. The mind loves to replay what it doesn't understand. It imagines different outcomes. It writes and rewrites the conversation that never happened. It searches for meaning in silence. But the past is unchangeable. You cannot rewrite what has already happened. And once you accept that truth, you stop waiting. You stop rehearsing. You stop expecting things to make sense that never will. Letting go does not mean pretending it didn't hurt. It doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean denying what happened. It means this: you no longer let what's unfinished define your future. You no longer need every answer in order to move forward. You stop carrying the emotional weight of what cannot be changed. The strongest people in history weren't the ones who received perfect endings. They were the ones who created their own. They accepted the past without needing it to be different. They walked forward without needing every door to close. They became immune to the emotional traps that keep most people stuck. And because of that, they were truly free. If you can learn this, you'll never again be controlled by unfinished conversations. You'll never again wait for someone to give you peace. You'll never again feel tied to a past that no longer exists. You'll walk away not because it didn't matter, but because your peace matters more. And when you build that kind of power within yourself, nothing will ever be able to hold you back again. Once you stop waiting for closure and external permission, you're ready for the next step: owning your life completely. The moment you take full ownership of your life, frustration begins to fade. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as the architect of your own future. This shift, this radical transformation, is rare because most people are still clinging to a quiet belief that life owes them something, that the world should be fair, that if they work hard, struggle enough, or act kindly, then they deserve rewards, recognition, and peace in return. But here's the truth. Once you let go of that illusion, You gain something far more powerful. You gain freedom. The freedom to create your own path without waiting for life to hand it to you. Most people secretly want life to compensate them. They think, I've suffered. I deserve something back. I've done the right thing. I should be rewarded. I've been kind. I should receive kindness. But when those expectations aren't met, they grow bitter. They feel cheated, like some invisible contract has been broken. They carry silent resentment for years, waiting for fairness that never arrives. But those who truly understand how the world works, they don't waste time demanding fairness. They don't sit around expecting life to align with their ideals. They don't keep score. They don't wait for justice, applause, or even acknowledgement. Instead, they adapt. This is where radical self-reliance becomes your greatest weapon. When you stop expecting life to give you anything, you become truly free. Free to take full control of what's in your hands. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop comparing yourself to those who have more. You stop blaming luck, society, or other people. And in that moment, all of your energy returns to where it belongs: building, creating, improving. And this shift gives you a rare kind of power. The ability to thrive, even when life is not fair. Because life is never fair, and it never promised to be. Most people carry invisible chains, the weight of expectation, the burden of entitlement, the bitterness that grows when life doesn't meet their assumptions. They tell themselves, I worked hard, I deserve success, I was loyal, I deserve loyalty. I'm a good person, so life should treat me well. But those beliefs are setups for disappointment. The truth is cold but freeing. Life doesn't work on fairness. It works on cause and effect. Effort increases your chances of success, but doesn't guarantee it. Kindness may improve your relationships, but doesn't guarantee others will be kind in return. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you stop being a prisoner of resentment. Because life doesn't operate on a point system. You don't get to exchange suffering for rewards. There's no ledger tracking your pain to reward you later. The world is indifferent to your expectations. And that's exactly why you must stop expecting. Stop waiting. Start acting. The strongest people in history, they didn't become powerful by demanding fairness. They became powerful because they moved forward without it. They didn't expect help. And when it came, they were grateful, but not dependent on it. They didn't need others to understand them. And when they were understood, it was a bonus, not a necessity. They weren't driven by external validation, because they knew that the only person who could determine their success was themselves. Most people waste years stuck in comparison, blaming, waiting, resenting, all because they expect life to be even. But those who rise above, they stop waiting for fairness and start creating your own outcomes. A new kind of clarity begins to emerge. The people who rise above the chaos of life aren't the ones with perfect circumstances. They're the ones who refuse to let unfairness slow them down. They don't waste precious time resenting what they weren't given. They don't obsess over what others had handed to them. They simply take the hand they were dealt and play it better than anyone else. This mindset makes you untouchable. Because when you stop expecting life to be fair, disappointment starts to disappear. When you stop believing that the world owes you anything, resentment fades away. And when you stop waiting for rewards from the outside, your full energy shifts to what you can control. That shift right there is what separates those who move forward from those who stay stuck in endless frustration. Most people fear this level of radical responsibility because it means they can no longer blame their parents, their past, their luck, their circumstances. It means their future is completely in their own hands. And that truth is terrifying for those who have built their identity around victimhood. But blame, no matter how justified, is just another form of self-imprisonment. The moment you stop saying, "Someone else needs to fix this," and start saying, "I will fix this," you begin to take back your power. This is why radical self-reliance is so rare, because most people are still emotionally attached to the idea that they need the right support, the right timing, the right environment, or the right people to succeed. They keep waiting for the world to give them permission. But the strongest individuals, they don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't depend on external support. They create momentum no matter what. Most of our deepest frustration comes from misplaced expectations. We expect that effort will guarantee results, that being a good person will guarantee good outcomes, that life will reward us for playing by the rules. But reality isn't based on shoulds. It doesn't bend itself to match your beliefs. It moves forward regardless of your expectations. And those who adapt succeed, while those who resist, they suffer. The moment you drop entitlement, you become dangerous. You no longer crave recognition. You no longer feel crushed when things don't go your way. You no longer waste energy fighting for fairness. You just keep going, no matter what. Now, many people misunderstand this mindset. They assume that self-reliance means isolation, that to reject entitlement is to become cold, detached, even selfish. But that's not what this is about. Self-reliance doesn't mean cutting off relationships. It means removing emotional dependency. It means realizing that while support is valuable, you must never need it in order to move forward. It means accepting that life will often be unfair, but that you are still 100% responsible for how you respond. And once you internalize that truth, you are no longer a puppet of external circumstances. You stop waiting for validation. You stop expecting others to treat you a certain way. You stop demanding justice from a world that was never built to provide it. And in that moment, you become free. But most people will never reach this state of mind. Why? Because they're too emotionally tied to the idea of fairness. They want to believe that one day, life will reward them, that their struggles will be recognized, that the scales will eventually balance. But those beliefs, while comforting, are often just illusions. And those illusions only create disappointment. Because when you expect nothing, you are never disappointed. When you believe that no one owes you anything, you never feel cheated. You feel free. Once you stop waiting for the world to be fair, something powerful happens. Your energy shifts from frustration to focus. You stop feeling robbed. You stop wasting energy wishing things were different, and instead, you begin to place your full attention on the only thing you can truly control: yourself. The strongest people in the world are not the ones who are given the most. They are the ones who need the least. They don't wait for motivation to act. They don't wait for applause to feel worthy. They don't wait for ideal conditions to make a move. They create their own momentum, and that momentum is not dependent on anyone or anything outside themselves. Most people avoid this way of living. Why? Because it demands something uncomfortable. Full responsibility. It means no more excuses. No more blaming your childhood, your surroundings, your luck, or your limitations. It means looking in the mirror and saying, if I want change, I must create it myself. And yet once you accept this, a quiet strength emerges. Frustration begins to dissolve. You no longer see obstacles as unfair. You stop believing that you're owed anything. Instead, you begin building yourself into the kind of person who no longer needs life to be fair, because you've made yourself unshakable. This is the highest level of freedom. Not the freedom to receive, but the freedom to act, to move forward, without waiting for perfect timing, perfect conditions, or perfect support. To be untouched by rejection, unaffected by setbacks, unmoved by the absence of recognition. It's the freedom to stop expecting, to stop resenting, and to start creating. The world doesn't owe you success. It doesn't owe you love, understanding, comfort, or happiness. And ironically, that truth is the greatest gift you'll ever receive. Because once you understand that nothing is coming to save you, you finally step into the role of the one who saves yourself. And just when you think you've broken free, you uncover something deeper, another prison that most never escape: the invisible chains of social conditioning. Most people walk through life believing they're making their own decisions, that their goals are their own, that their values are a personal choice, that their dreams are self-directed. But beneath the surface, they are puppets, moving to the silent rhythm of unseen strings. These strings determine what they crave, what they fear, what they believe is realistic or impossible. They shape how they define success, how they measure self-worth, and how they react to judgment. Every thought, every belief, every ambition, most of it was planted, not chosen, planted by family, by culture, by media, by teachers, peers, and the environment they grew up in. These influences began shaping them long before they even knew how to ask, "Is this truly mine?" And for most people, that question never comes. They live their whole lives chasing dreams that were never really theirs, living by standards they never questioned, believing in ideas they inherited, not investigated. They pursue careers not out of passion, but to gain approval. They hold opinions not because they understand them, but because those opinions are socially accepted. They avoid stepping outside the norm because they've been conditioned to equate approval with safety. But that's not freedom. That's not independence. That's not self-ownership. That is invisible control. That is being ruled without even knowing it. Breaking free from social conditioning is one of the rarest human achievements, because it doesn't just take rebellion, It takes courage. The courage to question everything you've ever believed. To look deep into your goals, your habits, your identity, and ask the hard question. The question isn't just, did I choose this? It's, am I brave enough to uncoos it if I didn't? Breaking free begins with rejecting the comforting illusion that the way things are is the way they should be. It means questioning the very structure you've been told to accept, and most people, let's be honest, aren't willing to do that. Because doing so forces them to take responsibility for something far more difficult than their circumstances, their own mind. Social conditioning is powerful not because it demands obedience, but because it hides the fact that you're obeying. In the first place, it doesn't shout, it whispers, it doesn't chain you down. It makes you build the cage yourself. It doesn't need to force you to conform. It just needs to convince you. That conformity was your idea all along. If people knew they were being controlled, they'd resist, they'd rebel. But when the control is invisible, silent, subtle, they comply without even knowing it. They go through life trying to meet expectations they never set. They measure their worth using standards they never chose. They define success by a blueprint handed to them before they could speak. And the most tragic part, they believe it's their own free will. This is why so many people feel a vague, persistent emptiness even when they've done everything right. They followed the map, go to school, get a degree, secure a stable job, get married, earn more, buy the house, seek social approval. And yet, something feels off. They can't quite name it, but they sense it. This life doesn't fully belong to them. Their choices are not their own. Their desires are artificial. Their fears aren't organic, but implanted. They are living out a script written by someone else, and they don't even know it. Escaping this trap begins with one radical realization. Most of what you believe isn't truly yours. Your fears, your goals, your assumptions, many of them didn't arise from your own observation or reflection. They were programmed into you, passed down, conditioned, absorbed. And if you don't consciously dismantle that programming, you will live not as your authentic self, but as a mirror of society's expectations. One of the most powerful tools of that conditioning, the need for external validation. Most people don't act from inner conviction. They act from fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of standing out. They hold back their voice, not because they don't have something to say, but because they're afraid of how it will be received. They chase approval, not because it truly satisfies them, but because they've been conditioned to believe that approval equals worth. They pursue status, not because it brings them joy, but because they've been taught that success is only real if others notice it. And since this programming begins early in life, they never think to challenge it. It just feels true. Breaking free means detaching from the fear of disapproval. It means understanding something liberating, that someone will always disapprove. Always. No matter what you do. But their opinion, it has zero power unless you give it power. The strongest minds in human history didn't earn their strength through validation. They earned it by rejecting the need for it. They didn't waste time trying to fit in. They refused to let other people's opinions dictate their direction. And because of that, they became immune to the invisible forces that control most others. But validation is only one layer of the trap. There's another, the cultural rules. We've been taught not to question. Every society has its own unspoken codes. What's appropriate? What's successful? What's acceptable? What's shameful? These rules dictate how people dress, how they behave, what they pursue, and what they hide. But here's the uncomfortable truth. These rules are not universal. They're not truths. They're collective agreements formed by habit, tradition, and repetition. They feel natural, but they're not. When the rules of your world are shaped by invisible hands, how can you ever know if you're truly free? Power structures create the framework for society, but most people treat these frameworks as sacred, unchangeable truths. They follow them, not because they've questioned them and agreed, but because they've been taught to obey them without thought. They assume that what society expects must be correct. But here's the truth. Social norms are not laws of nature. They're systems, they're habits, they're tools designed for conformity. And while some of these norms exist to maintain order, to make cities function, to protect people from chaos, many others exist for one simple reason: to control. They keep people predictable. They make individuals manageable. They keep the masses easy to influence. These norms don't always require enforcement, because people, out of fear, will enforce them on themselves. Most won't dare to stand out, not because they don't want to, but because they've been trained to fear rejection more than they desire freedom. This is why so few ever break free. True independence begins when you stop mistaking social suggestions for moral commands. Just because a belief is widely accepted doesn't make it wise. Just because a behavior is common doesn't make it correct. And just because something is traditional doesn't mean it deserves to continue. Breaking free requires the courage to walk away, to discard customs, habits, and even values if they no longer align with your own principles. It demands that you stop confusing social approval with personal fulfillment. And perhaps the most crucial part of deprogramming yourself is this. You must redefine what success means to you, because most people, they're chasing goals that were never truly theirs. They seek financial wealth, job titles, and public recognition, not because those things ignite their soul, but because they were told those things would make them happy. They pursue material success, not out of deep desire, but because society glorifies it. They choose security over uncertainty, not because stability excites them, but because they were conditioned to fear risk more than they love possibility. But real success? It can't be handed to you by culture. It can't be measured by applause or income or likes. True success is deeply personal. It's a quiet alignment between your actions and your deepest values, even if no one else understands them, even if no one else applauds. And this is where most people falter. They are terrified of what it means to redefine success on their own terms, because it means walking away from the validation they've built their self-worth around. Breaking free means questioning everything. It means holding every belief up to the light and asking, Do I believe this because it's true for me, or because I was trained to believe it? It means stripping away layer after layer of social influence until all that remains is you. Most people will never do this. They will live as reflections of their environment, not as independent minds. They will measure their worth with rulers built by others. They will be guided by fear, not by conviction. And they will keep chasing approval, blind to the fact that they are being controlled. But those who do the work, those who dare to see clearly and act authentically, they become something rare. They become unshackled. They stop needing to fit in. They stop adjusting themselves to please the crowd. They stop reacting to judgment like it matters. They choose based not on what's expected, but on what is real. They are not ruled by fear. They are not puppets of culture. They are not fragile in the face of disapproval. They are free. And while most people spend their lives trying to catch up with time, always rushing, always chasing, these people begin to live in a different rhythm, one shaped by truth, not pressure. After breaking free from societal conditioning, there's still one prison that silently traps nearly everyone: the illusion of time. Months pass, years vanish. Whole seasons dissolve into memory, and most people never even notice it happening. They keep moving, rushing, planning, believing that one day they'll finally slow down. One day, they'll breathe more deeply. One day, they'll feel fully alive. But that day never comes, because they've been conditioned to exist everywhere except here. In the moment they are in, the mind is always somewhere else, drifting back to old failures, lingering on regrets, replaying conversations that cannot be changed. Or it launches forward, worrying about outcomes, fixating on what might happen, chasing goals, deadlines, the next milestone. And in this endless pendulum swing between what was and what might be, the only thing that actually exists, the present moment, is forgotten. This is why time feels like it's slipping away, because we are never truly in it. We say time flies, but the truth is, we're the ones flying past time, missing it completely. This is where the ancient power of presence comes in. Most people believe time is fixed, that it flows at the same rate for everyone. But that's an illusion. Time is not something that happens to you. It's something that happens through you. And the way you experience it depends entirely on your awareness. Have you ever noticed how, as a child, life felt endless? A single summer seemed to stretch forever. Every day was filled with color, sound, movement, and surprise. Why? Because everything was new. Every experience demanded full attention. There were no regrets from the past, no anxieties about the future, only this moment. And this moment felt infinite. But as we grow older, life becomes repetitive. We stop noticing. We stop paying attention. We drift. Our days blur into habits. We become numb to our own lives. The present moment turns into something to endure, not something to fully experience. The Stoics saw this clearly. Long before neuroscience gave it a name, they knew the mind was often absent, disconnected from reality, letting time slip through its fingers. They watched people waste entire decades, not through laziness or lack of opportunity, but by mentally living elsewhere, And so, they trained for presence. They practiced the art of being here, not just as spectators, but as active participants in every second of life. And in mastering presence, they discovered a hidden truth. Time slows down when you are truly in it. You don't need more hours. You need more awareness within the hours. You already have. Most people think they are too busy, but what they really are is too distracted. They assume they're living, but most of their energy is consumed by thoughts that remove them from life itself. They miss conversations while thinking of emails. They eat meals without tasting them. They walk through entire weeks without remembering what they did. This is not life, this is autopilot. To master presence is not to magically stretch time, but to experience it so fully that it feels like it expands. It means you're no longer rushing through moments. You're living inside them. It means breaking the trance of mental time travel and coming back to now. Because now is the only place life actually exists. Not in your memories, not in your fears, not in your plans, but here, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this exact moment. The more deeply you live it, the more time becomes yours again. The depth of no lost in thought. That is where most people spend their lives. Not because they want to, but because they've never been taught how not to. To master presence is to reverse that pattern, to bring full awareness to everything that is happening right now. To engage with life not as a sequence of tasks, but as an immersive experience unfolding moment by moment. Most people only glimpse this state, and even then, only by accident. A brush with death, a powerful conversation, an overwhelming challenge. Moments so intense, so real, that the mind has no choice but to be fully here. But outside of these rare, forced awakenings, most people drift. They scroll without thinking, eat without tasting, speak without listening. They live out entire weeks on autopilot, convinced they've experienced life, when in truth, they've merely passed through it. And this is the quiet tragedy. They do not realize how much life they are missing. Presence is not about where your body is. It's about where your mind is. And for most, the mind is anywhere but here. They are buried in distraction, drowned in stimulation, so consumed by external noise that they are barely conscious of what's in front of them. But what if you could flip the switch? What if you could train your mind to stay with what is real, what is now? Instead of constantly drifting to what was or might be. To do this is to experience life as it truly is, not filtered through regret or anxiety, but felt directly. It means noticing the way sunlight touches your skin. It means feeling the warmth of your breath. It means hearing not just what someone says, but how they say it. It means fully absorbing even the simplest experiences. The weight of a cup in your hand, the silence between thoughts, the rhythm of your own footsteps. And something remarkable happens when you do. Time expands. What once felt fleeting becomes immersive. What once passed unnoticed becomes profound. A single minute of deep awareness feels longer and richer than an entire day spent distracted. This is the secret no one tells you. Time doesn't move faster as you age. Your attention just becomes shallower. Want to slow time down. Go deeper. Immerse yourself. Give everything your full attention. Because when the mind is fully engaged, time does not vanish, it becomes alive. This is why people feel time slow during creativity or flow. They are not multitasking, not thinking about what comes next. They are here, and that changes everything. But most people don't live like this. They chase the next thing. Rush through meals, conversations, memories. Even joy becomes something to check off. Even love becomes another notification. They consume life passively, as if it were background noise. But life is not noise. It is the song itself, and nothing will change until they decide to listen. Presence does not come from more time. It comes from depth. And the moment you realize that, you no longer rush through the day. You inhabit it. You don't just exist. You live. Not later, not someday, not when things calm down, but now. In this moment, in this breath, in this exact experience. Because presence is not a luxury. It is the entry point to everything real. The power of non-insistence. The sooner people understand this, the sooner they will stop watching life pass them by. This is the art of Stoic time alchemy, the rare ability to stretch moments into meaning, to create depth where others only feel repetition, to make each breath, each thought, each step feel eternal, rather than fleeting. The power to slow time was never about controlling the clock. It was always about controlling awareness, and those who master it live lifetimes within moments, while others waste decades wondering where the time went. But this same principle applies far beyond time. It also governs one of the most misunderstood forces in human life: influence. Most people think persuasion is about force. Push hard enough, talk long enough, argue well enough, and eventually people will yield. But real influence does not come from pressure. It comes from detachment. The more you try to force an outcome, the more resistance you generate, the more control you chase, the more it slips away. True influence is not about overpowering. It is about positioning. It is about understanding human nature deeply enough to allow change to unfold without pressure. The greatest persuaders in history were not the ones who demanded obedience. They were the ones who created environments where people arrived at truth on their own. Most people fail at influence because they are emotionally attached to the result. They argue with urgency. They speak with desperation. They want others to agree not just because they believe they are right, but because they need to be validated, and in that need, they weaken their own position. Why? Because when people feel they are being forced, they instinctively resist. Not necessarily the idea itself, but the feeling of being controlled. The Stoic understands this. They do not push, they plant. They do not argue to win, they share to serve. They present their truth with calm conviction, and then they let go. This is the power of non-insistence. It does not mean you become passive. It means you are precise. You know when to speak. You know when to hold back. You trust that truth is strongest when it does not need to shout. The most persuasive individuals are not aggressive. They are composed. They do not interrupt, they listen. They do not impose, they invite. And because of that, they leave space for others to shift, not by force, but by realization. Impatience ruins influence. Most people want others to change now, to agree immediately, to decide on the spot. But ideas planted under pressure rarely last. They create compliance, not conviction. And when the pressure lifts, the mind returns to old patterns. But the person who arrives at truth organically, who shifts because they chose to, will hold that belief with strength because it is theirs. The art of influence is not about dragging people to your position. It's about placing the idea and allowing it to grow at its own pace. That is how real change happens, slowly, quietly, from within. The quiet power of detachment. Ideas don't need to take root instantly. The strongest communicators know this. They introduce a new perspective, then step back, allowing time, space, and silence to do the convincing. Detachment is not passivity. It is not indifference. It does not mean withdrawing or withholding truth. It means removing the emotional need to be validated, letting go of the obsession with whether others accept or reject what you say. When you are no longer driven by the need for agreement, you speak from confidence, not insecurity. And that kind of confidence, quiet, grounded, calm, is magnetic. Most arguments are lost before they even begin, because they are built on the wrong foundation. People enter conversations ready to defend, prepared to battle, as if disagreement is an attack. But persuasion is not about dominance. It is about presence. A person who speaks without urgency, who carries themselves with calm certainty, creates a weight that is hard to ignore. They do not beg to be heard. They do not force others to understand. They simply express what is true, then let silence do the rest. The Stoics mastered this. They never demanded others follow their philosophy. They lived it, and their lives became the persuasion. Their actions carried more influence than any argument ever could. Non-insistence is also a weapon in negotiation. The moment you show desperation, you lose leverage. When your emotions betray your need to win, you hand over power. But a person who communicates with detachment maintains control, not just of the conversation, but of themselves. They do not react emotionally. They do not escalate tension. They do not chase agreement. They simply state their position and allow space for the truth to land. This is the paradox. The less you demand influence, the more you gain it. Most people push too hard. They pressure. They over-explain. They cannot stand uncertainty. They fear the silence after speaking, so they fill it with noise. But the person who doesn't need to be agreed with commands attention. The person who can wait, who can sit calmly while the other person processes, holds the real power. Influence does not require force. It requires clarity, patience, and the discipline to withhold when the impulse is to control. The one who is least emotionally attached to the outcome always has the advantage. Because when you do not need agreement to feel secure, you are free, and in that freedom, others feel it too. They sense the absence of pressure. They feel the weight of your words. And because you are not trying to win them, you leave them space to choose. That is what makes persuasion last. It is not forced, it is earned. The one who does not insist, who does not demand agreement, who does not need to be right, creates an aura of quiet certainty, and that certainty It persuades more than any argument ever could. This is why the Stoics were not preachers. They never forced their philosophy. They simply embodied it. And in doing so, they influenced without effort. They did not chase agreement, yet people followed them. They did not demand converts, yet their ideas shaped the world. Because real influence is not about how hard you push. It is about how deeply you live your principles. Non-insistence makes a person unshakable. It removes the emotional hunger to convince. It frees you from needing a response. It transforms persuasion from a struggle into a quiet gravitational pull. When mastered, your presence carries more power than any push ever could. But there's another war, a quieter, deadlier one, that most people never know they are fighting. The war against their own internal noise. That endless chatter, the overthinking, the self-doubt, the loops of unnecessary thought that steal energy without ever offering clarity. This is the real enemy. Not the world, not the people around you, but the undisciplined mind that cannot be still. Most suffering does not come from life itself, but from the stories we keep telling ourselves about it, replaying old conversations, imagining future disasters, worrying about things that never happen, analyzing what doesn't need analysis, trying to control the uncontrollable. Mental exhaustion is not caused by doing too much. It's caused by thinking too much about things that don't matter. The mind, when untrained, becomes a wild animal chasing its own tail. And in the chaos, you lose the ability to focus, to act, to feel alive in the present moment. The Stoics understood this, too. They knew that power begins with the ability to command your own thoughts, not to suppress them, but to filter them, to silence what is useless, and to amplify what is essential. The greatest minds in history were not the ones who thought the most, but the ones who thought with precision. They did not let every thought take up space. They eliminated the mental clutter that clouds judgment and drains resolve, because in a world full of noise, the one who can stay clear will always lead. The greatest minds in history did not think the most. They thought the clearest. They removed the excess. They stripped their thinking down to its purest form. They were not caught in loops of self-doubt and over-analysis. When they thought deliberately. And when they acted with certainty. This is the skill that separates the confident from the confused. Not intelligence, but the ability to control thought. To think only when necessary. To eliminate the useless. To train the mind to be still when stillness is needed, and sharp when precision is required. Most people assume that more thinking leads to better decisions. But this is false. More thinking often leads to hesitation, doubt, complication. The mind, left alone, produces an endless stream of noise. It replays what no longer matters. It worries about what may never happen. It builds stories from shadows and turns molehills into mountains. But those who master their minds do not let every thought take root. They cut through the noise with ruthless clarity. This is not suppression. It is discipline. It is knowing when a thought deserves your attention and when it is just mental static. The greatest strategists, leaders, creators, they do not think more. They think better. They waste no energy on thoughts that do not matter. They speak with clarity. They act with calm precision. They understand this truth. The mind is like a sword. If left dull and untamed, it swings wildly, hurting you more than your enemies. But when sharpened and disciplined, it becomes your most powerful weapon. Most people suffer because they give every thought power. They react to every worry. They analyze every doubt. They engage with every fear. But thoughts are just thoughts. Most do not need to be solved, only dismissed. Mental exhaustion is not from doing too much, but from thinking too much about nothing. Awareness is the cure. Begin to notice which thoughts drain you and which serve you. Begin to choose which ones to feed and which to let die. Because the greatest power is not in thinking more, but in mastering focus. And those who control their focus control their reality. Those who master thought experience life differently. They are not drained by overthinking. They are not slowed by hesitation. They are not consumed by endless inner dialogue that does nothing but confuse and delay. They move with efficiency, act with clarity, and think with purpose. Most people have no idea how much mental clutter they carry. They assume mental exhaustion is normal. But exhaustion does not come from thinking. It comes from thinking about the wrong things. It comes from overloading the mind with worries that lead nowhere, conversations that never happened, replays of old mistakes, and predictions of imagined futures. The strongest minds are not the loudest. They are the cleanest. They do not think more, they think better. They cut away the unnecessary. They see thoughts for what they are, tools, not masters. This is a trained skill. It requires discipline. It requires awareness. You must learn to ask, does this thought deserve my energy? Is this mental loop helping me act, or just wasting time? And more than anything, you must learn to be comfortable with silence. Most people fear silence. They feel anxious when the mind is not filled with sound. But silence is not emptiness. It is the ground where clarity grows. It is in stillness that your sharpest insights appear. It is in silence that your true intelligence awakens. Mental clarity is a choice. You are not a prisoner to every thought that enters your mind. The mind can be trained. It can be disciplined. It can be refined. When that happens, thinking becomes precise, like a scalpel, not a flood. Most people go through life with minds that are loud, cluttered, chaotic. They mistake activity for clarity. But endless thinking is not productivity. It is mental drain. They drown in thought and never touch truth. But those who train their minds to think only what is needed, who eliminate distractions, who quiet the storm, these people walk through life with unshakable power. They do not hesitate. They do not overthink. They do not fear silence. They act with focus and speak with clarity. This is an invisible battle, but it shapes everything. Those who master it gain a mind that cannot be broken, and in the end, the ability to think fewer, sharper thoughts is what determines whether you control your mind or it controls you. A quiet mind is a powerful mind, and a powerful mind is a free mind. Illusions fade, but clarity alone is not enough. Influence isn't just about sharper thoughts. It's about timing, knowing when to act and when to disappear. Most people think that constant visibility is power. That if they are always present, always speaking, always posting, always seen, then they will be respected. But real power often comes from absence. The strongest do not need to be loud. They do not need to be everywhere. They do not need to be always available. In fact, they become more powerful by being rare. Because the mind values what is scarce, those who are always speaking are rarely heard. Those who are always available are easily dismissed. But those who retreat strategically, those who speak less, appear less, but do so with intention, they command attention without needing to chase it. This is the art of strategic disappearance. It is not hiding. It is not avoidance. It is control. It is presence used like a scalpel, precise, measured, rare enough to be valued. Because when you are always seen, you become part of the background, expected, ordinary. But when you step back, when you disappear from noise, from unnecessary conversations, from constant exposure, you become noticed again. People wonder where you went, what you are doing, why you are silent. Your absence becomes presence. Your distance becomes mystery. Your elusiveness becomes strength. The most respected individuals in history were rarely those who spoke the most. They were those who waited for the right moment. They were not constantly performing. They were not desperately visible. They were measured, disciplined, elusive. They knew that less can carry more. The more rarely people hear your voice, the more weight it carries. The fewer the appearances, the more powerful the arrival. This is why the loudest voice in the room is not the one that commands attention. It is the one that speaks only when it must. The mistake most people make is being too accessible, too predictable, too open. They share everything. They show up to everything. They never retreat. And in doing so, they become common. Their presence loses gravity. But those who master distance, who withdraw without weakness, who disappear without apology, who let silence work for them, these people become magnetic. Not because they seek attention, but because they make attention seek them. Their silence speaks louder than noise ever could. Their absence makes them unforgettable. This is influence born not from force, but from restraint. Words echo, but absence leaves the deepest mark. Most people are terrified of disappearing. They equate silence with irrelevance, distance with weakness, invisibility with failure. But presence without purpose is the real weakness. When you are always seen, you become expected. When you are always heard, your words lose gravity. When you are always available, you are no longer valued. True influence is not forged in constant exposure, but in strategic scarcity. The most powerful individuals in history did not flood the world with their presence. They withdrew. They watched. They chose their moments with ruthless precision. They knew to appear less is to be felt more. Disappearance is not defeat. It is a weapon. It creates mystery, breeds anticipation, and demands attention without needing to beg for it. The Stoics understood this well. They avoided needless conflict. They left trivial discussions untouched. They withdrew not to escape, but to preserve their energy, to increase their authority. A person who is always seen is assumed. A person who is rarely seen is remembered. Constant exposure creates familiarity. Familiarity breeds indifference. But scarcity builds reverence. When you are not always there, people pay attention. When you are and when you disappear deliberately, you do not fade. You become unreachable, unpredictable, unignorable. Stepping back is power. It lets you observe while others exhaust themselves. It allows you to act from clarity, not from reactivity. It gives you the leverage to choose your battles, rather than be dragged into noise. This is why the strongest leaders speak rarely. They do not explain themselves to everyone. They do not chase arguments. They do not react. They position. Their silence is louder than others' shouting. Their absence is felt more than others' presence, because they understand influence is not in proving. It is in preserving, not in being seen constantly, but in appearing when it matters. Most people talk too much, show up too often, and weaken themselves by being too available. But those who master strategic disappearance know that limiting access creates value. They know that influence does not grow from shouting louder, but from speaking less with greater impact. They do not fear being forgotten, because they are never truly gone. They do not chase relevance, because their absence creates it. They are not remembered because they were always present, but because they appeared at the exact moment when presence mattered most. The prison of unexamined desires influence isn't about being everywhere. It's about being where it matters. Those who waste their presence become background noise. Those who protect their presence become unforgettable. The power of strategic disappearance is not about avoidance. It is about precision. It is not weakness. It is mastery. But even those who master presence often fall into a deeper trap, the pursuit of false desires. Society has taught people what to want before they ever knew how to question. They chase success, wealth, attention not because it fulfills them, but because they were programmed to believe it would. Their goals are not theirs. Their dreams were inherited, their ambitions manufactured. They call it free will, but it is merely repetition. Patterns reinforced by media, marketing, culture, and social pressure. They climb ladders they never placed. They chase approval they don't need. They measure life using metrics they never agreed to. And when they achieve what they were told to want, they feel nothing. Because emptiness is the price of chasing borrowed dreams. They don't need more. They need to stop. They need to ask the question almost no one dares to ask. Do I actually want this? Or was I taught to? Most people live in quiet confusion, thinking they're broken. Because success doesn't feel like success. But the problem isn't them. The problem is that they're running toward goals that were never real. Real dissatisfaction rarely comes from failure. It comes from winning the wrong game. You were told more money would bring peace. More followers would bring love. More status would bring fulfillment. But more never feels like enough when what you're chasing was never yours to begin with. This is not ambition. It is mental enslavement. And the worst part, the prison is invisible, made of desires that feel like your own. You don't need more. You need truth. You need to ask, who taught me to want this? Who benefits if I keep chasing it? And finally, what if I stopped? Because if you don't examine your desires, you will spend your life chasing phantoms, mistaking motion for meaning. And when the end comes, you won't be tired from running. You'll be hollow from never having stood still long enough to ask, was any of this ever mine? Escape the hunger trap. Modern dissatisfaction is not a flaw. It is a design, a system built to never end, to keep you always reaching, always needing, always one step away from feeling enough. They don't want you fulfilled. They want you chasing, because a fulfilled person doesn't buy, doesn't follow blindly, doesn't need permission. But once you see the design, you are no longer trapped in it. You stop chasing the goals you were told to want. You begin stripping away everything that isn't truly yours. You stop asking, what will make me happy? And start asking, who told me I should want this? This is how you break free, by dismantling the false desires that never belonged to you. Real peace does not come from gaining more. It comes from needing less. The moment you realize this, you become unshakable, no longer manipulated by trends, no longer enslaved by comparisons, no longer hooked on approval. Society survives by feeding discontent. It tells you that you must look a certain way, own certain things. Live a certain lifestyle. It makes you believe that your worth is measured in things you can display, and your value in things others can see. From childhood, you are trained to confuse desire with identity, to equate validation with meaning, to believe that every craving is a sign of who you are. But this is not truth. This is programming, and most never escape it. Marketing attaches your self-worth to products. It makes you believe that beauty is bought, that love is earned through status, that confidence comes from things. And when the lie is repeated enough, it becomes a belief. But those who wake up see through the illusion. They don't play the game because they understand. Winning a meaningless game is still meaningless. Minimalism is not about living with less. It is about wanting less. It is about removing the mental noise, killing the false goals, and cutting out anything that does not serve your truth. And when you do that, something radical happens. You feel whole, without achievement, without applause, without the next milestone. You no longer seek peace in the future. You find it in yourself, because finally, you are not controlled by anything outside of you. People believe they are unhappy because they haven't reached their goal. But the truth is, they've never questioned why that goal exists at all. They keep chasing, keep striving, keep accumulating, believing that somewhere, at the end of it all, satisfaction will finally arrive. But it doesn't, because desire itself is the root of suffering. The more you want, the more you feel like you lack. The more you compare, the more you feel behind. The more you chase, the more restless you become. Desire is a treadmill, and most people don't realize they can step off. The strongest minds know that true power isn't found in having, but in not needing. They are immune to marketing, unaffected by trends, indifferent to applause. They see through the illusion that more means better. They do not need approval. They do not crave status. They do not hunger for things that were never theirs to begin with. They own their desires instead of being owned by them. But Most people are easily manipulated because their desires are not their own. They are sold dreams, packaged illusions, false goals made to look like salvation, and they buy in at the cost of their peace. A person ruled by desire can be sold anything, told anything, controlled by anything. But the one who masters desire is untouchable, not because they have everything, but because they need almost nothing. To escape the trap, you must question everything, not just what you want, but why you want it. Ask yourself, did I choose this? Or was I told to want this? Let go of the idea that more will finally make you whole. It won't, because wholeness is already within you. It's just been buried under layers of false wants. The mind that is free from needless desire is light. It does not compare. It does not rush. It does not crave. It simply lives fully, presently, and in peace. Most will never feel this because they are too attached to their programming. They are afraid that if they let go of their desires, life will feel empty. But here's the paradox. Letting go is what removes the emptiness. The fewer unnecessary wants you carry, the more you value what already is. You stop imagining a better future and start experiencing a richer present. Freedom is not in having more. It is in needing less. To break free from manufactured desires is the highest act of self-mastery. It is what separates the impulsive from the disciplined, the restless from the still, the lost from the grounded. And while most will continue to chase, those who dare to stop, to strip away illusion, to examine every craving, will discover a rare truth. Nothing is missing. The first step to freedom is letting go of what you were never meant to carry. But even after you break free, the journey isn't over. The hidden weight of resistance after breaking free from programmed wants. There remains another trap, resistance, the quiet war against reality. It is not loud, not dramatic, but it is relentless. It shows up in the smallest of moments, a delayed reply, a long line, a plan gone slightly wrong, and each time, the mind tightens, not because of what happened, but because it refuses to accept that it happened. Most people live in this constant state, tense, frustrated, irritated, not because life is unbearable, but because they are always arguing with what is. They resist traffic. They resist weather. They resist how others behave. They resist every tiny deviation from their expectations. And in doing so, they exhaust themselves, fighting battles that do not need to be fought. The strongest minds have mastered a forgotten art, micro-surrender, the ability to let go in real time, not in theory, not after the fact, but in the moment, before tension has time to grow. This is not weakness. It is not giving up. It is not passivity. It is precision. It is choosing to drop the mental resistance that serves no purpose. When resistance is present, every inconvenience feels like an attack. Every challenge feels like betrayal. Every delay becomes a crisis. But when you learn to surrender, a shift happens. You stop turning small moments into heavy burdens. You stop arguing with the rain. You stop fighting traffic. You stop expecting the world to bend to your mood. Most suffering does not come from life. It comes from the refusal to let life be what it is A traffic jam is just traffic. A slow email is just a delay. A rude person is just someone operating from their own patterns. It is the mind that makes it personal. The mind that says, "This shouldn't be happening," and in doing so, creates unnecessary pain. Micro-surrender is the skill of dropping that thought before it becomes a storm. It means noticing frustration arise, then letting it pass. Feeling tension build, then choosing not to feed it. Seeing plans change, then accepting it without resistance. This does not mean apathy. It does not mean letting life roll over you. It means meeting reality without extra weight. Most people fight what has already happened. Replay what cannot be changed. Cling to what didn't go their way. And in doing so, they bleed energy into moments long gone. But those who train themselves to release instantly, to drop the story, to surrender the reaction, they move through life light. They do not carry what does not need to be carried. They do not resist what is already here. They do not fight themselves in the name of fighting life. They remain fluid where others become rigid, peaceful where others feel attacked, free where others remain trapped in the exhausting prison of their own refusal to accept reality. Most people carry tension from moment to moment, letting small frustrations stack into emotional mountains. But the wise, they release each moment. As it passes, they do not drag the past behind them. They do not let a delay at 9 a.m. poison their entire day. Letting go is not avoidance. It is not ignorance. It is the removal of pointless resistance. Not every battle needs to be fought. Not every irritation deserves your energy. Not every inconvenience requires a reaction. Those who learn this move lightly through life. They do not accumulate unnecessary stress. They do not turn daily hiccups into long-term burdens. Most believe that control leads to peace, that if they just plan better, manage harder, exert more force, life will finally cooperate. But control is an illusion. There will always be detours, disruptions, people who do not meet your expectations. And the more you try to grip reality, the more it slips from your hands. The true difference between those at peace and those in chaos is not what happens to them, but how much they resist. Those who resist suffer. Those who release move forward. Letting go does not mean apathy. It does not mean giving up. It means knowing the difference between useful effort and wasted struggle. It means accepting what is, not clinging to what should be. Releasing emotional attachment to things you cannot control. Understanding that frustration does not fix anything. The root of most suffering is a single false belief. This shouldn't be happening. That traffic shouldn't exist. That person shouldn't act that way. That plan should have gone smoother. But life owes you nothing. People are not required to behave as you expect. Reality is not obligated to match your preferences. The strongest minds accept this fully. And because of that, they waste no energy resisting. They adjust. They adapt. They let go of the fantasy of control and engage fully with what is. Micro-surrender is what prevents small stress from becoming emotional injury. It is what lets peace remain even when circumstances shift. Letting go of resistance does not make life easier. It makes you lighter. Most live in a constant storm of low-level frustration, always reacting, always tense. always one inconvenience away from snapping. But the trained mind, it floats, it allows. It does not fight what cannot be changed. It does not attach its peace to the behavior of others. It does not link its mood to minor disruptions. It stays still even when the world moves wildly round it. This discipline of letting go in small moments is not a minor thing. It is the foundation of unshakable peace. A person who cannot surrender to a small delay will shatter under real pressure. A person who resists every little irritation will live in constant exhaustion. Non-resistance is not weakness. It is mastery. It is the art of remaining powerful in a world that refuses to go your way. Stoic elasticity, the art of controlled strength. Strongest minds are not those who fight everything. They are those who know what's worth fighting for. They do not resist reality. They do not waste energy trying to force what cannot be forced. They master the art of letting go. They release what does not serve them. They surrender to the truth of the moment, not as victims, but as masters of their response. Micro-surrender is not a what-I'm act. It is a discipline, a habit, a lens through which life is seen. Those who resist everything will always be exhausted. Those who let go will always be free. And in the end, freedom is not found in controlling everything. It's found in not needing to. Letting go in small moments prevents resistance from stacking. But don't confuse this with weakness. Letting go is not passive surrender. It is strategic energy conservation. It is choosing when to push, when to endure, and when to step back. True strength is not constant pressure. It is elasticity, the ability to expand and contract at will. Most people misunderstand resilience. They think it means always pushing, always being strong, always fighting through. But that's not strength. That's rigidity. And rigidity breaks the unbending. Mind is the first to snap. The unyielding spirit is the first to shatter. The strongest minds know when to tighten their grip and when to let it go. The greatest warriors did not fight every battle with full force. They understood context. They knew that not all challenges are equal. They applied just enough pressure and conserved energy for when it truly mattered. This is Stoic elasticity, the art of being unbreakable because you are flexible, to bend when bending is wise, to yield without giving up, to contract so that you can expand again later. Most people suffer because they don't understand this. They treat every inconvenience as a crisis. They overreact. They overexert. They drain themselves fighting the irrelevant. And when the real challenges arrive, they have nothing left. Resilience is not about being made of stone. It is about being forged like steel, strong, yet flexible, solid, yet responsive, capable of absorbing impact without cracking. Those who master this elasticity endure the longest. They move efficiently. They apply pressure with purpose. They do not waste their force. They remain still when stillness is needed, and fierce when action is required. The strongest minds do not burn out. They bounce back because they do not waste energy on what does not deserve it. The strongest minds do not waste energy on the meaningless, but they never collapse. When it truly matters, they have trained themselves to calibrate their strength. They do not meet every inconvenience with full resistance. They adjust their force to fit the challenge. This is where most people go wrong. They believe being tough means never yielding. They treat every delay, disagreement, every minor setback as a battlefield. But that is not strength. That is exhaustion in disguise. If every moment is met with maximum tension, burnout is guaranteed. If every challenge is fought with equal effort, resilience becomes self-destructs. The Stoics knew better. They didn't fight the world. They flowed with it. They didn't drain themselves on what couldn't be controlled. They saved their power for what truly mattered. Because energy is a resource, not a performance. They remained calm where others unraveled. They endured where others collapsed. They adapted where others resisted and shattered. A tree that cannot bend will break in the wind. A mind that cannot adjust will crack under life's pressure. Flexibility is not weakness. It is survival. The untrained mind is either too soft when strength is needed, or to tense when it's time to rest. But those who master the rhythm, the rise and fall of effort, they move with precision. They do not confuse exhaustion with accomplishment. They do not mistake suffering for strength. There are times where full force is necessary, where endurance, discipline, and focus must be absolute. But there are also times where releasing is wiser, where stepping back conserves more than it costs, where softness is the ultimate strategy. Knowing which moment you are in is what separates those who thrive from those who burn out. Most people never learn this. They believe more force equals more strength. But that's a lie. Force, when applied blindly, is wasted effort. It's like slamming into a wall that will never move, again and again until your strength is gone. That's not resilience. That's self-sabotage. True strength is strategic. Like breathing. Inhale, exhale, expand, contract. Apply pressure, then release it. The mind that never relaxes eventually cracks. The mind that knows when to rest lasts a lifetime. Burnout doesn't come from too many problems. It comes from never adjusting. It comes from treating every situation like a crisis. Endurance is not about pushing endlessly. It is about knowing when to rest before you break. The Stoics knew this. They trained not just to suffer, but to choose their suffering wisely. They practiced controlled hardship, so they could be strong by choice, not by accident. The Stoics did not wait for difficulty to arrive. They trained for it in advance. That is why they stood while others collapsed. Resilience, true resilience, is not about enduring endlessly. It is about elasticity, the ability to stretch then recover without breaking. Resilience is like a stringed instrument. Too much tension, it snaps. Too little, it makes no sound. But tuned just right, it produces power, beauty, endurance. Most have never trained this. They are always too rigid or too soft. They either push until collapse, or avoid all challenge and remain fragile. They do not understand. Strength is not constant effort. It is strategic effort. It is energy deployed with intention. Those who master this principle are untouchable. They don't waste energy on minor battles. They don't burn out over delays. They don't get consumed by the trivial. But when life demands it, they rise, full force, full clarity, No hesitation. Then they retreat. They recover. They do not carry strain that no longer serves them. This is how real resilience is built. Not by always being strong, but by knowing when to be strong. Not by fighting everything, but by fighting wisely. Not by endless endurance, but by strategic conservation of energy. Most will never understand this. They confuse exhaustion with toughness. They think pushing through everything means they are strong. But true strength is knowing when to push and when to pause. It is knowing that resilience is not about suffering. It is about sustainability. The undisciplined mind is always at war. It burns out from overreaction, or it fails from under-preparation. But the disciplined mind, the one that can expand and contract at will, becomes something unshakable. The Stoics knew this. That is why they were calm in chaos, unshaken in storms, untouchable in adversity. They didn't waste energy. They didn't fight when fighting was pointless. But when a real challenge arrived, they were ready, because they had trained elastic resilience. But there is another level even greater than this: the ability to not react. Most people waste strength not by fighting, but by reacting to everything. They jump to defend, to explain, to prove, to retaliate. But the greatest power is not in response. It is in control. Not silence from fear, but silence from mastery. Reactivity is not dominance. It is desperation. It says, "You control me. You decide how I feel, how I act, what I focus on." But when you stop reacting, you break that chain. You regain your strength. You become calm, deliberate, unmoved. The power of not reacting. Emotions are not meant to be public property. But for most people, they are. Anyone can push their buttons, trigger a reaction, hijack their peace. A person who reacts to everything is predictable, manipulable, emotionally exposed. They can be dragged into petty arguments, cornered into defense, tricked into revealing what should stay hidden. Their emotions are no longer theirs. They belong to whoever provokes them. The strongest individuals do not explain themselves to every critic. They do not prove their worth to every doubter. They do not respond to every provocation. They stay still, because stillness is power. Silence makes people overthink. It creates tension. It shifts control from the speaker to the one who withholds. The less you say, the more others question. They start to wonder, "What are you thinking? Why aren't you responding? Did I make a mistake?" Most people react out of habit. They explain when questioned, defend when criticized, engage when provoked. But this is how they give away power. Every reaction shows you can be controlled. Every defense reveals insecurity. Every explanation surrenders leverage. Non-reaction is not passivity. It is discipline. It is strategy. It is dominance without aggression. It is the ability to let others waste their energy while you conserve yours. It is the choice to not fight meaningless battles, to not soothe someone else's discomfort by sacrificing your own calm. A person who cannot be provoked is feared. They are unreadable, unshakable, uncontrollable. They do not reveal, they allow others to reveal themselves. They do not need to prove respect. They command it. They do not need to answer insults. Their silence hurts more than any reply. Most conflicts are lost at the first word, the first overreaction, the first emotional slip. The one who speaks first often loses position. The one who reacts cedes control. But the one who stays still, they force the other to confront their own uncertainty. They make them fight against their own mind. Silence creates pressure. It makes the other fill in the gaps with assumptions, with fear, with regret. People crave reaction. They seek acknowledgement, validation, reassurance. Silence denies them that, and that denial destabilizes them. The less you speak, the more weight your words carry. The less you react, the more control you hold. Those who always respond are easy to control. Those who choose their response hold all the power. The one who stays silent controls more than just their voice. They control attention. They control energy. They control the direction of every conversation without speaking a word. They are unreadable. They are unshakable. They are untouchable. While others rush to fill silence, they let it stretch. Let it do the work. Let others expose themselves trying to make sense of the quiet. This is not passivity. This is power. They do not flinch at provocation. They do not chase validation. They do not engage unless it is worth it. Most people hand over their energy to every disagreement, every insult, every challenge. They think reacting is how they prove strength. But it only proves how easily they can be provoked. Every reaction is a leak in control. Every word spoken in haste is a step away from power. Those who master non-reaction hold the greatest leverage. They make others speak first. They let weakness reveal itself without ever reaching for it. Silence is strategy. Stillness is dominance. Most are uncomfortable with silence because silence shows them themselves. But the disciplined mind does not fear discomfort. It uses discomfort as a sharpening stone. They do not rush to respond. They do not overshare. They do not explain to those who do not deserve explanation. They conserve their energy. They protect their presence. They control the battlefield without ever stepping onto it. But silence alone is not enough. A quiet mind that is unprepared will still collapse when pressure arrives. Non-reaction is a shield. Preparation is the armor. The Stoics knew this. You do not become strong by waiting for chaos. You train for it in advance. They practiced discomfort on purpose. They faced fear in their minds before facing it in the world. They visualized loss, pain, hardship, so that when it came, they would not break. Most people hope they'll be strong when tested. But hope is not a plan. Hope cannot hold the weight of a collapsing world. Only preparation can. Strength is not born in the storm. It is built long before the sky darkens. Controlled adversity builds unbreakable minds tested in fire but forged before the flames. The mind that has suffered by choice does not tremble when suffering arrives uninvited. It does not hesitate in crisis because it has already practiced hardship deliberately. The Stoics did not wait for life to test them. They tested themselves first. They faced discomfort by choice, so that when pain arrived by force, it found nothing to conquer. Fasting when food is available. Walking when comfort is an option. Sleeping cold to train the will. Removing luxuries not to suffer, but to remember. They are not needed. This is not punishment. It is strategy. It is preparation. It is training for the inevitable. Most people run from discomfort. They build lives padded with ease. They avoid struggle, delay difficulty, and hope that life stays soft. But softness does not prepare you. It only weakens you. A body never pushed becomes weak. A mind never tested becomes fragile. A spirit never challenged becomes breakable. Controlled adversity is the antidote. It is how you build resilience before it's required. It is how you train for battles that haven't arrived yet. Because when life hits, and it will, you don't rise to the level of your potential. You fall to the level of your preparation. The untrained panic. The prepared adapt. The fragile break. The forged endure. The man who has chosen hunger does not fear scarcity. The woman who is trained in discomfort does not flinch when comfort is gone. The person who has faced hardship on their own has nothing to fear when it comes on its own. This is not theory. This is not philosophy. This is practice. Deliberate difficulty builds invisible strength. Small doses of chosen pain make a person immune to the chaos of the world. Train your mind like you would your body. Push it, strain it, harden it. Then, when the storm comes, you will not be moved. Most people wait to be tested, but by the time the test arrives, it's too late to prepare. The Stoics didn't wait. They trained in advance. They stripped comfort away not because they hated ease, but because they refused to be dependent on it. They walked into the cold. They skipped meals. They trained tired. They tested limits on purpose because they knew a life without adversity builds a mind unfit for it. Those who avoid struggle remain fragile. Those who train for struggle become fortresses. Discomfort does not break you. Being unprepared for it does. Fear does not destroy you. Believing you are safe from it does. Most people only meet hardship when it arrives. They panic. They resist. They shatter. But the trained mind has already seen it, already walked through it, already conquered worse. They don't flinch in chaos. They don't beg for comfort. They don't hesitate in crisis. They move forward, calm, ready, sharp. This is not heroism. It is preparation. The weak wait for strength to appear. The strong build it before it's needed. The weak pray for ease. The strong train for storms. The weak avoid challenge. The strong create it. And when life strikes, as it always does, they are not caught off guard. They are not gasping for composure. They are already standing tall. The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in war. Ancient wisdom through strength is not luck. It is not found. It is forged. Forged through voluntary hardship. Forged by walking into struggle before. It knocks down your door. To become unbreakable is not to be fearless. It is to have met your fear already, on your own terms. Those who train in discomfort are not surprised when it comes. They've seen it before. They've made peace with it. They do not break, because they have already bent and returned stronger. Train early, train often. Do not wait for chaos. Become stronger than it now. The strongest minds are not just unbreakable in crisis. They are unshakable in perception. They see through deception. They read people before they speak. They understand intent before it's spoken. But this level of clarity does not begin by looking outward. It begins within. True perception starts with self-awareness. The mind cannot see clearly if it does not know itself. Most people think reading. Others is about observing behavior, decoding tone, analyzing expressions. But they forget, what you see in others is filtered through the lens of your own mind. And if that lens is cracked, your perception is distorted. The insecure assume they're being judged. The dishonest assume they're being lied to. The overly sensitive see attacks in every word. The manipulative suspect manipulation. The world is not seen as it is. It is seen as you are. People fall for lies because they lie to themselves. They are manipulated because they've never examined what manipulates them. They see through fear, through desire, through ego, and they project those distortions outward, calling them truth. The masters of perception begin with self-confrontation. They examine every assumption. They question every reaction. They dissect their own triggers until nothing within them is hidden. They cannot be fooled by others because they no longer fool themselves. They understand their own weaknesses, so they cannot be controlled through them. They recognize emotional manipulation because they've studied how emotion works in themselves. Psychological immunity begins with brutal honesty. Most people analyze others endlessly while leaving themselves unexamined. They seek to interpret, intent without understanding their own patterns. They wonder, why do I react this way? Why does this feel personal? Why do I keep repeating this mistake? But instead of answering, they blame others. And so they stay blind to see the world clearly. You must first clean your own lens, strip away projection, dismantle delusion, become immune to your own distortions. Only then can you see others as they are, not as your emotions want them to be. The battlefield is the mind. Master it, and no enemy can deceive you again. They see through charm and false sincerity. They read hidden hostility behind polite tones. They detect neediness even when it's disguised as confidence. They don't take things personally because they know what belongs to them and what doesn't. Most assume they are rational, but unless they have examined their mind deeply, they are not seeing clearly. They are seeing through filters they've never cleaned. Unprocessed emotions cloud perception. Unhealed insecurities shape every interaction. Unfaced fears dictate reactions. And because they've never looked inward, they assume what they see in others is objective truth. But it's not. A distorted mirror cannot reflect clearly. The person who does not know themselves cannot know others. The self-aware have removed those distortions. They no longer confuse fear with fact. They do not react impulsively because they understand their own impulses. They do not let emotion override logic because they know the source of every emotion. They have mapped the terrain of their own mind. So when they read others, they see the truth behind the performance. To understand people, one must first understand human nature, not in theory, not in books, but within themselves. How does fear twist thought? How does ego cloud clarity? How does insecurity warp behavior? These are not abstract questions. They must be answered personally before they can be answered universally. The root of all behavior begins in the mind. If you have not studied your own, you will misread everyone else's. But most avoid this work. They study others while remaining strangers to themselves. They analyze outward because it's easier than facing what's within. The few who reverse the mirror, who confront their illusions before trying to dismantle others, become masters of perception. They don't take offense easily because they know most people act from wounds, not wickedness. They don't fall for manipulation because they've disarmed their own weaknesses, leaving nothing to exploit. They can see when someone is acting from fear, when someone is begging for validation, when someone is bluffing, when someone is lying, without needing the lie to be spoken. This is not intuition. This is trained perception, built through brutal honesty, sharpened through self-examination. The most effective leaders, the most powerful minds, the most composed negotiators all share one trait. They know themselves so well they're never confused by others. Most people live trapped in their thoughts, ruled by emotion, confused by assumption. But those who have turned inward and faced their mind without mercy walk the world with a clarity others will never reach. They don't guess what others are thinking. They already understand how the mind creates thoughts. They don't struggle to read emotion. They've mapped the emotional blueprint of the human experience. They don't seek approval because they've already approved of themselves. The deeper one understands their mind, the clearer they see the world. They move through life without misinterpretation, without projection, without illusion. They don't see what they want to see, or what their wounds allow them to see. They see what is. To understand others, you must first remove the illusions within yourself. To read people accurately, you must first read yourself without flattery, without denial, without distortion. This is a secret few ever discover. But those who do cannot be manipulated, cannot be emotionally hijacked, cannot be misled by appearances. They see with perfect clarity not just what is shown, but what is hidden, not just the message, but the motive beneath it. And once a person reaches this level of awareness, they hold quiet control over every room they walk into. But perception alone is not enough. Even the sharpest sight is useless without the ability to adapt. Life is not a controlled environment. It is unpredictable, shifting, indifferent to plans. True mastery is not about eliminating chaos. It's about navigating it with precision. And here lies the paradox. Control is only achieved when you stop trying to control everything. Most people live in war with uncertainty. They overplan, overthink, oversecure, desperate to make life fit their expectations. They fear change. They resist what is. They cling to stability even when it's decaying beneath them. But this is how they lose control. The world is not something to dominate. It is something to read, to flow with, to influence strategically. The strongest individuals have mastered the rarest of skills, the balance between control and surrender. They don't resist change, nor do they drown in it. They don't force rigid plans, nor do they drift without purpose. They move with intent, adjust with precision, and know exactly when to bend and when to hold. They control what is controllable. They release what is not. This is the difference between collapse and command. Most think control means force, that real power is in domination. That victory comes from bending reality to their will. But the more force you use, the more resistance you create, the more rigid your expectations, the more fragile your mind becomes when life inevitably moves differently. The illusion of control is believing power lies in structure, but true power lies in flexibility. Flexibility without discipline is chaos. Discipline without flexibility is collapse. True strength is being both grounded and adaptable, unshakable and fluid, prepared and surrendered at the same time. Flexibility without discipline leads to inconsistency, drift, failure to commit. But discipline without flexibility leads to rigidity, a structure that snaps under pressure, a plan that collapses at the first sign of change. The strongest do not choose between structure and flow. They master both. They train to be firm and fluid, grounded and adaptive, intentional and responsive. This is where most people fail. They think they must pick a side, order or spontaneity, strategy or surrender, discipline or flow. But true mastery is in holding both at once. The greatest warriors, thinkers, and tacticians in history did not cling to fixed plans. They adjusted without losing direction. They shifted without losing control. They mastered discipline without becoming rigid. This is the paradox few ever grasp. To be in control, you must first stop grasping for control. The harder one clings, the more fragile they become. Those who force control panic when things shift. But those who understand flow adjust instantly. They don't expect things to stay the same. So when change comes, they're already moving with it. They don't resist the current, they redirect it. They don't demand order from the world, they create it from within. Most suffering comes not from events, but from fighting reality, expecting life to follow a plan, believing effort guarantees outcome, assuming that doing everything right will force the world to cooperate. But the truth is, life doesn't obey personal preferences. The world moves on its own terms. Those who accept this gain a rare and quiet power. They do not break when things go wrong. They do not freeze when plans unravel. They remain composed because they've trained for uncertainty. The secret lies in discernment. Know what to control. Know what to release. Trying to control everything creates anxiety. Trying to control nothing creates apathy. True power is choosing wisely. Apply effort where it matters. Let go where it does and single quotes t. Step in when it's useful. Step back when it's wasted. Most people are either gripping too tightly or drifting with no direction. The few who master balance dominate in silence. They do not waste energy resisting the inevitable. They do not waste potential by failing to act. They move strategically, adjust in real time, always a step ahead. There is an ancient concept for this. Wu Wei, VVI. Effortless action, non-resistance, control without force. Not overpowering reality, but moving with it so perfectly that it looks like you control. They do not fight change. They anticipate it, adapt to it, master it. Most people waste their strength in unnecessary struggle. Fighting time, resisting change, wishing the past would return, demanding the future to slow down. But time doesn't slow, life doesn't pause, and change never asks permission. Only those who stop resisting can finally lead. Only those who let go can finally move freely. Only those who flow can finally fly. Time does not wait. Change does not ask permission. And those who try to stop it are crushed beneath it. But those who move with it rise. Mastering flow and control is mental aikido. Using the momentum of events instead of clashing with them. They do not resist life. They redirect it. They do not brace for collision. They shift their stance. They adapt without losing direction. But most people never learn this. Why? Because they are attached to the illusion of certainty. They want guarantees. They want control over everything. They want life to follow their plan. But that world does not exist. The only real control is self-control. The only true stability is internal. Stability. Those who master their own mind don't need life to go their way. They don't require stability because they have become stable. They are not threatened by chaos because they have trained to move through it. Most are trapped in frustration because they expect the world to behave the way they think it should. They expect people to act with fairness. They expect effort to yield instant reward. They expect things to remain stable forever. And when that doesn't happen, they panic. They resist. They suffer. But reality doesn't care about expectations. It moves on its own terms. Those who fight this break. Those who flow with it rise. They do not cling to rigid plans. Yet they never lose sight of their goals. They adapt instantly, yet their purpose remains unshaken. They control only what matters, and they let go of what doesn't. The weak wish for stability. The strong train for unpredictability. The weak demand certainty. The strong embrace the unknown. The weak cling to control. The strong control themselves. True mastery is not in forcing life to comply. It is in moving with life, without losing control of the self. The strongest do not resist change. They master it. They are untouchable not because they dominate the world, but because the world cannot dominate them. Yet there is a deeper layer to true independence, freedom from external validation. Most people are not free. They are prisoners to the approval of others. They crave recognition. They adjust behavior for acceptance. They fear disapproval. They seek praise like oxygen. And in doing so, they give away their power. The Stoics understood this trap. They knew, as long as a person depends on validation, they are not in control of themselves. Their confidence is not real. It is borrowed. Their actions are not their own. They are influenced. Their happiness is conditional. It exists only when others approve. This is why they rejected the need for praise, not because they despised recognition, but because they refused to be ruled by it. Most people stop doing what is right and start doing what is popular. They abandon their principles for applause. They seek comfort in being liked rather than strength in being resolute. And in doing so, they become prisoners of perception. External validation is never stable. Praise today becomes criticism tomorrow. Admiration fades with opinion. The person who chases praise is always at the mercy of others, confident when admired, insecure when ignored, energized when noticed. Doubtful when overlooked. Their worth is not rooted in themselves. It is rented from the outside world. But the Stoic does not chase admiration. Because they understand, praise does not change reality, whether they are celebrated or condemned. They remain steady, whether they are seen or unseen. They stay on course. Their value does not come from being recognized. It comes from being grounded in principle. Most people will never reach this state. They will continue to chase applause. They will shape their words, their actions, even their identity, to fit what is expected. They will work hard, not for mastery, but for attention. They will chase success, not to fulfill their potential, but to be admired. And because of this, they will always be controlled. True confidence is quiet. It does not need reassurance. It does not beg to be seen. It does not collapse in silence. The strongest individuals act without seeking validation. They do not need applause to continue. They do not need recognition to feel worthy. The desire for praise is weakness dressed as ambition. It appears as drive, but it is dependency. Those who crave admiration are not truly motivated. They are afraid of being overlooked, afraid of being invisible, afraid of being misunderstood. They don't chase excellence because it matters. They chase it because they need it to be seen. And because of this, their efforts are not truly their own. The greatest minds in history were often misunderstood. They were criticized, dismissed, ridiculed. But they did not break, not because they hoped for future applause, but because they did not need it. They acted from principle, not popularity, from clarity, not approval. And because of that, they became unshakable. Most people will never know this freedom. They will live starving for acknowledgement, building their identity on the shifting sands of opinion, begging to be seen so they can believe they matter. But the few who reject this trap, the few who no longer need to be praised, become untouchable. They cannot be manipulated with flattery. They cannot be silenced by criticism. They cannot be redirected by public pressure. Their path is their own. Their mind is their own. Their strength is not conditional, it is absolute. The moment a person stops needing praise, they gain an advantage over almost everyone. They move faster, think clearer, stand taller, and remain steady. Where others crumble, the world may reward those who seek validation, but it respects those who no longer need it. A person who does not crave admiration is rare. A person who is not swayed by opinion is powerful. A person who acts with full independence is truly free. Most will never reach this freedom. They will keep adjusting themselves to fit expectations. They will work not for mastery, but for applause. They will fear obscurity more than failure. They will chase admiration more than strength. And because of this, they will remain trapped in a cycle of dependency, where worth is rented and identity is borrowed. But those who break free become different. They do not shrink under judgment. They do not bend for approval. They do not need recognition because they recognize themselves. This is why the Stoics did not seek praise, not because they despised admiration, but because they had already approved of themselves. Their worth was internal. Their drive came from within. Their discipline was fueled by purpose, not by applause. And the moment a person stops seeking praise, They shatter the invisible chains of external validation. They no longer adjust their thoughts to gain approval. They no longer alter their path to earn applause. They no longer perform, they live. But there is a deeper layer still, the ability to disconnect completely, not just from opinions, but from the noise of the world itself. Modern life is constant. Engagement, notifications, opinions, news, arguments, conversations, attention, always pulled outward. Most people never experience clarity because they are never alone with their thoughts. Always consuming, always reacting, never resetting. The Stoics understood. Withdrawal is not weakness, it is purification. Just as the body benefits from fasting, the mind benefits from solitude. Not loneliness, intentional silence. Clarity is not found in stimulation. It is found in stillness. Perspective is not refined in endless noise, but in deliberate silence. Those who never step back, never see clearly. Those who never disconnect, never understand deeply. Most people fear being alone, not because solitude is painful, but because it reveals what they've been avoiding. So they fill empty moments with noise, scroll, consume, talk, distract. They never face themselves, so they never grow. But distraction is not peace. Avoidance is not strength. Noise is not wisdom. The strongest minds step back. They do not fear silence. They seek it. They do not drown in social pressure. They detach from it. They do not let the world think for them. They create space to think for themselves. This is social fasting. Deliberate withdrawal to reclaim attention, to clean the lens of perception, to remember who they are without the noise. Perception, self-awareness. These do not grow in crowded rooms. They are sharpened in silence. Most people assume that constant connection is always good, that always being available is strength, that being alone is a problem. But forced connection is not strength, it is dependence. A person who cannot be alone is not truly free. A person who always needs interaction is not in control. They are being controlled, ruled by opinion, shaped by pressure, led by noise. They do not know what they think, because they've never created this silence to listen. The ones who master social fasting see what others cannot. They know that most interactions drain energy, that most conversations add nothing, that most opinions deserve silence. So they step back, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. Power does not come from being everywhere. It comes from knowing when to disappear. Most people think stepping back means becoming irrelevant, that silence means being forgotten, that withdrawal is weakness. But the truth is the opposite. The most powerful individuals are not the ones constantly engaged, but the ones who know how to control their presence. They appear when it matters, withdraw when it doesn't. And because of this, their words land deeper. Their presence echoes louder. The overstimulated mind loses its clarity. It reacts instead of reflects. It absorbs instead of analyzes. It becomes a mirror for the world instead of a compass within it. Those who never give themselves space are operating on borrowed thoughts. They are not thinking, they are repeating. Social fasting is not isolation. It is strategy, a deliberate Retreat to recalibrate perception and reclaim direction. It is not disconnecting out of weakness. It is stepping back to return sharper. These individuals are not overwhelmed. They do not scatter their attention. They are not pulled by every trend, every comment, every piece of noise, because their thoughts are their own, not a patchwork of external influence, not a collage of what others want them to believe. Most struggle with clarity because they never built it. They simply absorbed what surrounded them. And that's why stepping back is not about escape. It's about ownership. The one who withdraws regularly sees the world clearly, speaks with precision, moves with certainty. They are not caught in trends. They are not pressured by the crowd. They are not addicted to reaction. They do not chase every update. They are not disturbed by silence. They do not confuse stillness with emptiness, because they know stillness is power. Silence is clarity. Solitude is strength. Most will never see this. They will continue to drown in engagement, mistaking stimulation for connection. But the few who pause, will rise above the noise, not by shouting louder, but by listening deeper, facing pain before it rivers. Solitude, even if temporary, grants a power most will never touch, the power of a mind untouched, unpolluted, unshaken by the noise of the world. The strongest individuals do not fear withdrawal. They use it, not as an escape, but as a weapon. They step back, not because they are lost, but because they are sharpening. They disappear, not because they are weak, but because they are recalibrating. They control their energy like a master swordsman wields a blade, deliberately, precisely, never without purpose. To them, withdrawal is not absence. It is alignment. Silence is not invisibility. It is concentration of force. And when they return focused, clear, unstoppable. But clarity alone is not enough. Strength is not built in isolation. It is forged in preparation for a world that does not care, because reality does not unfold as expected. People betray, plans fail, loss is inevitable, and those who are unprepared are shattered when it happens. This is why the Stoics practiced the forgotten art of the mind, negative visualization, while most avoid imagining suffering. They embraced it, not because they were pessimists, but because they refused to be broken by surprise. Most people live in denial. They avoid thinking about failure, about betrayal, about death. They believe that if they do not imagine pain, it will never come. But ignorance does not protect. It weakens. Those who never visualize the collapse of what they love are devastated when that collapse comes. Those who have seen it already in the mind move through it without falling apart. The Stoics knew to fear something is to be ruled by it. And the only way to eliminate fear is to face it first. Not in the moment, but before it arrives. This is premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evil. A warrior of the mind trains by seeing clearly what others refuse to acknowledge: loss, failure, betrayal, collapse. Not to dwell on despair, but to strip it of its power. Most people assume that loyalty is forever, that effort will be rewarded, that life will match intention. But life doesn't care about intention. And when their illusions fall apart, they do too. Those who practice losing in their mind move through the real thing with silent strength. Negative visualization is not about giving up hope. It is about anchoring hope in something stronger than illusion. Collapse is only fatal to the unprepared. A mind that has already suffered in silence, in solitude, in strategy, does not shatter when reality arrives. The betrayal that was imagined doesn't pierce as deeply. The failure rehearsed doesn't paralyze. The loss accepted doesn't destroy. When a person has walked through devastation in the mind, they greet hardship not with panic, but with poise. Most people assume that imagining negative outcomes somehow invites them. But this is delusion. Denial is not defense. Avoidance is not armor. Hope, without preparation, is not strength. It is a gamble. Those who never visualize loss are shattered by it. They freeze. They collapse. They are left with nothing but confusion. Because they never prepared. Because they refused to even consider that things could fall apart. Negative visualization is not about pessimism. It is about immunity. It is not suffering unnecessarily. It is eliminating unnecessary suffering. It is walking through failure before it happens so that it cannot break you when it does. It is the stripping of fear before fear has a chance to grip. It is the quiet building of strength before chaos has a chance to test it. Those who expect hardship move through it differently. They do not crumble at betrayal. They already knew people are capable of treachery. They do not spiral in loss. They have already accepted that nothing is guaranteed. They do not freeze in failure. They already planned for setbacks. Their stability is not numbness. It is preparation. Most people rely on hope. The strong rely on plans. Most people wish. The strong rehearse. They do not need to hope things will work out. They are prepared for when they don't. And ironically, this makes life sweeter. Because they know what can be lost. They value what they have more deeply. Because they've imagined failure. They work smarter, with urgency. Because they anticipate betrayal. They protect their trust and give it only to those who prove worthy. This practice does not darken life. It sharpens it. It removes emotional waste. It replaces panic with action. It replaces shock with clarity. It replaces illusion with command. Most people will never do this. They'll continue to hide from pain, to pretend things will always work out, to believe that hardship is for other people. But reality respects no fantasy. When it comes fast, without warning. And the only ones who move through it with power are the ones who have already faced it before it arrived. The strongest individuals are not those who never suffer. They are those who cannot be broken by suffering, are not those who have never shattered. They are those who shattered in silence and rebuilt without witness. They suffered first in the mind, before reality had a chance to hurt them. And when pain arrived, it found them already prepared. They do not panic because they have rehearsed. They do not collapse because they have already stood again from imagined ruins. Strength is not built in the spotlight. It is forged in solitude. It is made not from applause, but from endurance when no one is watching. But there is a greater strength still, not the strength of endurance, but the strength of not needing to prove you're strong. Most people are desperate to be seen, to be admired, to be validated. They flash achievements, signal status, try to appear powerful, but the more effort a person spends trying to look powerful, the more obvious their insecurity becomes. True power is quiet. It does not ask to be noticed. It does not beg for recognition. It does not posture, because it has nothing to prove. The Stoics knew this. The man who needs nothing from others is the most respected. The one who does not care to impress is often the most impressive. They do not talk about their discipline, they live it. They do not advertise their strength, they embody it. They do not demand admiration, and so they earn it. A person who is unimpressed by themselves does not need others to clap. Their presence speaks louder than performance. Their calm weighs more than any proclamation. They conserve energy by not managing perception. They move silently, and the world listens. Most people think respect comes from noise, from being loud, from always speaking, from always proving. But the deepest respect belongs to those who are selective with their voice, precise with their action, minimal with their self-promotion. They do not seek attention, and so attention follows. They do not signal strength, and so strength is felt. A person obsessed with appearing impressive is never truly free. They are prisoners to the reactions of others. Their confidence rises and falls with applause. Their identity is shaped by approval. Their emotions are dictated by how they are perceived. But the ones who release this need, who no longer chase validation, who no longer seek to be admired, they operate on a different level. They are untouchable, because nothing external controls them, not praise, not judgment, not silence. Their power comes from within, and so it cannot be taken. The strongest minds are often the least loud. The most influential often move with the least effort. The most respected often speak the least. Because power that needs to be announced is not real. But power that moves quietly, that lives without needing attention, is absolute. The truly powerful are often quietly remarkable. They do not flaunt intelligence, nor advertise status. They do not dress their speech in unnecessary complexity to seem profound. They do not overshare accomplishments to win admiration. And because of this, they become mysterious, unpredictable, and intriguing. Those who try too hard to impress are easy to read. Their need for validation leaks from every action. But those who are unimpressive on purpose remain unreadable. In their silence, they hold power. Most assumed success and recognition must go hand in hand. That influence requires visibility, but the most influential often say the least and act the most. They are not trapped in the cycle of proving themselves. They do not seek to be the loudest voice in the room. They do not care for admiration, because they have nothing to prove. This absence of desperation makes them appear stronger than those who endlessly push for validation. A person who seeks to impress is always performing. They modify behavior to gain approval. They adjust personality to fit expectations. They speak not from substance, but from hope of admiration. They act not authentically, but strategically chasing recognition. But those who are truly free do not engage in this game. They say what they mean, whether it is liked or not. They act on principle, whether it is noticed or not. They do not need applause to move forward unimpressively when others scramble for attention. They remain composed. It is this lack of desperation that commands real respect. The moment a person stops caring about admiration, they become magnetic. They do not waste energy on appearances. They do not inflate importance. They do not demand recognition, because they know respect is earned through presence, not performance. Those who are unimpressive by choice create an aura of mystery. They become unpredictable. They hold attention without seeking it. They control perception by not manipulating it. Most will never grasp this. They will continue trying to appear powerful instead of becoming powerful. They will chase admiration instead of embodying it. They will exhaust themselves in pursuit of being noticed, instead of understanding true presence. It does not demand to be seen. The few who embrace this paradox gain an edge others do not understand. They move without effort. They influence without forcing. They gain respect not because they seek it, but because they operate entirely outside the need for it. This is why they hold power that most will never achieve. A person who no longer seeks to impress is no longer ruled by short-term validation. Their moves are not dictated by applause. Their decisions are not influenced by fleeting recognition. This detachment from immediate reward grants them something rare: the ability to think in decades, not days. The strong minds operate on a different timeline than the average person. Where most chase instant validation, they build lasting strength. The power of long-term thinking. Those who think long-term are planting seeds that will bear fruit long after others have given up. Most people live reactively, seeking immediate gratification, instant recognition, fast results. They want success, but they want it now. They want progress, but refuse to endure the slow compounding effects of consistent effort. They act on short-term emotions, not long-term vision, but the truly unshakable. Those who shape their lives deliberately do not play games won in a single move. They play games that unfold over years, decades. They are grandmasters of patience. The difference between those who struggle and those who dominate is simple: timeline. The impatient chase short-term wins that vanish as fast as they come. They quit when rewards don't arrive quickly enough. They constantly shift focus, abandoning long-term goals for fleeting pleasures. But those who think long-term are never in a rush. They understand that true mastery, true success, true influence do not come from fast moves, but from playing the game in ways others cannot even see. Most fail because they expect immediate results. When something doesn't work instantly, they assume it's not working at all. They jump from plan to plan, never letting efforts fully mature. They start businesses, projects, relationships, ambitions only to abandon them at the first sign of resistance. They do not realize nothing great is built quickly, so they never build anything great. Patience is not passive, it's strategic. Not waiting aimlessly, but making moves today that will pay off tenfold in the future. Those lacking patience waste energy chasing every shiny new opportunity, promising fast success. Those who possess it commit deeply, endure quietly, and emerge victorious while others burn out. Patience is rare because long-term rewards are invisible at first. There's no instant gratification, no immediate proof things are working. Progress is slow, almost imperceptible. This is where most fail. They quit before their effort's effect appears. But those playing the longest games do not measure progress by what's seen today. They trust the process even when it seems fruitless. Most believe success is intensity, working harder, faster, pushing relentlessly. But true dominators know success is duration. It's about who endures longest, who continues when others lose interest, who stays focused when distractions arise. The world is full of those who start strong but collapse halfway. The ones who last are those who refuse to be rushed. A person operating on a long timeline is unshakable. They don't panic at setbacks. Because success is not measured in weeks or months, but years and decades. They aren't distracted by trends because they chase permanent foundations, not temporary gains. They do not break under pressure because they have already accounted for resistance. They are not desperate for immediate validation because they know real value compounds over time. Most struggle with patience because they only see effort, not the compounding results. They assume that if something doesn't produce instant rewards, it is failing. They look for shortcuts, quick wins, and rapid transformations. But those who build true strength do not think this way. They do not care how long it takes. They do not abandon principles for faster rewards. They do not sacrifice long-term greatness for short-term pleasure. The Stoics understood patience is not about waiting. It is about endurance. It is the ability to act today without expecting results tomorrow. It is discipline to move forward without reassurance. It is wisdom to see beyond the moment, beyond emotions, beyond the need for instant feedback. Those who master this mindset outlast everyone else. Most will never embrace it. They will keep searching for the fastest path to success, chasing results, instead of building foundations, expecting overnight change, abandoning anything that demands time. Because of this, they remain at the mercy of those who think further ahead. The ones who control the world are those who move strategically, while others act impulsively. They do not rush, but they do not stop. They are patient, but never passive. They act deliberately, but are not in a hurry. Because of this, they are always ahead even when it looks like they move slower. True power is not speed, but sustainability, not intensity, but endurance, not chasing fast results, but becoming the person who keeps playing the game long after others have quit. That is why the strongest minds always win in the end. Mastering these Stoic lessons is not about temporary inspiration. It is permanent transformation. It means stepping out of emotional reactivity, breaking free from society's illusions, becoming someone who controls their mind, their actions, and ultimately, their life. This path is not for the weak. Most will never detach from the need for approval. Most will never train their minds before hardship arrives. Most will never embrace patience, self-reliance, or strategic withdrawal. But those who do, those who truly apply these lessons, will move through life with calm confidence and control that others cannot understand. You will no longer seek validation because you recognize your own worth. You will no longer fear adversity because you've already faced it in your mind. You will no longer chase shallow distractions because you operate on a timeline far beyond the present. And most importantly, you will no longer be a prisoner of external forces, because you have built something stronger than circumstance, stronger than opinion, stronger than temporary struggles. You have built yourself. The world does not hand power to those who beg for it. It rewards those disciplined enough to claim it. And once you master these Stoic lessons, your life will never be the same. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these Stoic lessons resonated with you the most? Drop a comment below, and let's start a discussion around these life-changing principles. Your perspective matters, and your insight might help someone else on this journey. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This is just the beginning. There's so much more to learn, so much more to master, and so many more ways to elevate your life. Stay strong, stay sharp, and keep moving forward.